Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 235. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. I've finally got in touch with my inner little girl, so says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You-Know.
How's it going, eh?
I stumbled over that a little bit, but the idea's there.
Yeah, and especially when you hear the segment later on, you know exactly what he's talking about. I really can't believe I said that.
Please check the show notes. We cover a lot of books this episode. There was actually 7 different titles that we cover, plus listener voicemail that we're going to get to. A couple listener voicemails, I think, that we're going to get to on this episode to discuss. But great chance for us to kind of talk about some books we haven't had a chance to talk to in a while. We actually also review our last Dick Grayson title out of the relaunched and make our decisions as far as which one was our favorite, which was very difficult. So it's a fun segment as far as I think we're, even now that we've already recorded that, we're both still kind of
still thinking about changing.
Yeah. Which is a good problem to have, but it'll be interesting to talk about that. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Jim, over at DCBService.com, they're doing that 45% off on all the major publishers again this month, where most of the titles you're going to be able to get at 45% off, which is great. In honor of that $2.99, they said they're going to be doing a lot of that for the last 2 months they've been doing it, which I think is great. That's a great discount. But besides that, this DC Universe Online Legends #1. This is the title that's going to be tying into the DC Universe Online game. It's a bi-weekly series, 26 issues long. Marv Wolfman, Tony Bedard, art by Howard Porter and Liv Say, just because it's... I was picking on you so much before. I'll leave that in. It's my own stupid flub. One of the great things about this is it's $2.99 regularly. They're doing a 50% off for the first issue, $149. The second issue is going to be 45% off. I think that's great. But even the cover, looking at it, it's a great, wraparound cover featuring the DC Universe, and I'm very excited for the game. So to have a tie-in comic book that's coming out bi-weekly that goes along with the game for me is just awesome. So I'm definitely in on that one. Over at InStockTrades.com, you're a big fan of this series, Jim, and I am too. Azrael. This is Angel in the Dark, the trade paperback. It collects the first 6 issues of the Azrael series. A hired killer comes to Gotham City, seeking revenge for crimes committed decades in the past, and Azrael faces an impossible conflict. What if God's justice forces a hero to claim one of God's servants? And that's Fabian Nicieza, art by Ramon Box and John Staniski. And the cover artist on that is Francisco Mattina, Mattina, 144 pages, $17.99 regularly, 38% off, only $11.15. I know you're a big fan of Azrael, so
definitely good deal there.
So thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for supporting our show. James, in honor of Evil Tuesday, what kind of a podcast are we?
We are a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing on the show. So if you haven't read something, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Remind me never to do that again. Remind me never to say that again or anything. I thought I was being cute and clever, and now I'm creeped out. For a lot of different... Not because you were particularly scary, but because it was scary to be sitting here with you with the look on your face as you were doing that. Let's talk some comics so I can feel clean again.
Green Lantern, let you and I destroy that space junk.
Jim, for our opening segment, there's a number of things that I really wanted to talk about. Last night was Spike TV's Game Awards, and one of the trailers that I was really looking forward to was Arkham City. I wanted to see the Batman Arkham City trailer because I loved the first game so much and the idea of their continuing with this. For me, with gaming, one of the things that I've enjoyed as a trend with media tie-ins has been they seem to be getting better. Like before, if it was like a media tie-in, like a Batman game or something like that, you were pretty much so guaranteed that the game was going to be hopefully okay, meaning that it was a good game for diehard fans. It's cool to be running around as a character, but it wasn't going to be a great game. Arkham Asylum broke that mold, and it's it's a trend that's like continuing now, where some of these games are kind of breaking that mold. I'm playing Tron Evolution right now, which is like a prequel to the Tron movie that's coming up. Now, this is a game that's good. It could be great. The control needs to be tightened up a little bit. I'm hoping at some point in time maybe we get a little bit of a patch. I don't think it's going to happen, though. What'll happen is, it's a good game. I'm glad I'm playing. The storyline's really great. But when you're playing, for example, the camera is supposed to shift at certain times, so you have a better view of what you're doing. It doesn't quite shift on time.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So you'll die for, like, dumb reasons. I don't want to... There's 3D games like that where the game's clearly broken. This game isn't broken. It's a good game. I'm glad I purchased it. I've been playing it nonstop since I've got it, and choosing to play it nonstop because I've been enjoying myself. Light cycles are fun and stuff like that. Where it's relevant to this is, though, going back to last year with Arkham Asylum, that game was brilliant. I mean, it just plays extremely well. You feel like you're Batman. The gadgets work. They have a purpose within the game world. There's all of the right beats of there being like a bat cave that was on the asylum and stuff like that. Everything you expect for Batman. All the storyline was written by Paul Dini. It had Oracle, the Joker, Harley Quinn, Gordon, all of these characters exactly how you expect them to be. And all the hidden stuff that was in there, like the Riddler playing throughout, was all great. Arkham City, we got to see the trailer right now. Hugo Strange looks like he's going to be the big bad. Two-Face, it looks like they showed his character model. When we saw it on there, it looks like he's obviously the Joker's back, Harley Quinn's back, the usual players from the last game. But I'm glad to see more of the Batman universe being a part of this. This city aspect where he's actually being hunted down by Hugo Strange's kind of police army that he's got, and it's almost like Arkham City's become a police state. They're hunting down Batman. I'm curious to see what the storytelling reason is for Batman being hunted, and how Hugo did that. What did you think about it, though? You didn't play the first game. Getting to see this, I know you're looking to buy a PlayStation 3 this year for the DC Universe Online game. What about Arkham City for you? Is that from the trailer, is it a game that is on your radar?
Oh yeah, definitely. Arkham, is on my radar just because of all the stuff you've said and what I've seen from it. This is definitely on the radar just because it did look so cool. One of the things I really wish these game companies would do is take the adventure, how they initially lay it out, how they initially lay out you playing the game through, go through, run it, and make a movie off of that. I would actually spend money on that just to see the storyline of how the thing should play out.
The cutscenes, though, in most games, after you've beat the game, the cutscenes are unlocked, so you could actually watch it that way. So it's kind of a reward for playing the game. Here's the problem I have with that. If I could buy it on... Unless it was way after the fact, maybe like a year later or something like that, then I'd go with what you're saying. But if it was released around the same time the game was, I would say no, because I like the reward of the story unfolding as I play. I think you're talking about, though, you'd be okay with it being after the fact, am I right?
Yeah, I'm talking like right now, release Arkham Asylum one. Because as we have the new Arkham game coming out, release the old one now. Basically kind of like a little prep thing to get people back into the excitement, back into the groove of, Arkham City coming out.
I'd probably buy that.
Yeah.
I was like all ready to dispute you and go, no, Jim, it's a crazy idea because half the fun is unlocking it. But now that I'm thinking about it like after the fact, like a year later, would I like to have that on DVD and maybe, put in some bonus cutscenes in between to make it link a little better, because certain elements of the story unfold while you play.
Yeah.
So you would obviously need cutscenes to fill in those gaps.
I would show, the actual action sequence of, someone actually playing the game. Have it, back as
really?
If it's that's what I'm talking about. Actually have someone playing the game, like the designer of the game, saying, this is how I imagined going through this game.
You know how many hours that would be, though?
Yeah, I know. And that's why it'll never happen.
It wouldn't work, yeah.
But I would love to see that. That's something I would love to see, just that play out, or even just a shortened version, actually do it, because they already have the stuff created, take some of the cut sequences, add a couple extra ones, that have the gap filler in stuff, and just play it out that way. Even if they do that, I would pay money for that.
Or a graphic novel tie-in or something like that, where you could read the story. You could actually use the cutscene engine as panels.
Yeah. Just something a little extra like there, because I would actually buy stuff for games that I'm not even playing. Like, there's some of those, Final Fantasy games that I'm never going to play those things, but they look pretty cool, and I think I probably would enjoy seeing, the actual story from them play out.
Do you like role-playing games as far as on the computer and stuff? Like I know you're playing like MMOs like City of Heroes, but I'm talking about story-driven ones that are single-player, or do you prefer the interactivity of the multiplayer environment?
I like the... I go for either or, but I do like single-player a little bit better, kind of. And problem I have with some online role-playing games is I always think of a different way to do something, and I can't do it. Whereas, like, when you got the dice and the board role-playing game, if you come up with something that no one thought of, it's, you can actually play that way.
Okay, so you like the freedom of being able to use your imagination.
Yeah, completely go off the beaten path and try something that nobody thought they would do. And that's kind of the fun for a true role-playing game. You can do that. And there are limits because there are limits with the computer program. It has to have the set boundaries. It has to have the set guidelines. But I'd like to be able to go this way.
Talking about online role-playing games, DC Universe Online. I know there's a beta test going on right now that people are being added to, but jumping from that and talking about that game in general, one of the things that was solicited this month is DC Universe Online Legends, which is going to be a 26-issue bi-weekly miniseries that ties into the game, releasing along with the game. What do you think about... See, for me, this is a pure joy. I love when comics lead into gaming, lead into films. So, like, when you were talking about the DVD thing, I'm kind of like, well, no, actually kind of thinking about it. Like, because Batman Arkham Asylum has action figures and statues and stuff like that. And I've been eyeing them, I've got to admit, because I liked the game so much and I loved the visual styling of it. So, to be able to have stuff to kind of enhance my room with, that whole atmosphere. And the only reason why I want more of those things is because the game was so good. Talking about DC Universe Online, how excited are you? I know you pre-ordered the comic series like I did. We've got Tony Bedard and Marv Wolfman writing, Howard Porter, and I forget who else is, and I apologize, I forget who else is on art. But, that's a high profile. Tony Bedard's hitting home runs for me right now. It's Marv Wolfman, too.
Yeah.
Both heavily involved with the game, so the game world is going to be continued outside of it as well. Do you like that? Because I liked it with City of Heroes when they had a comic that was running with it. Do you like that kind of thing?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I pre-ordered them. Looking forward to it when I saw it. It's funny. I remembered hearing about it, then I completely forgot about it. Then I saw it again because I was ordering the Legacies. I'm like, wait, what? The online. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. And so I clicked on it. I went to the next page and there was issue 2. And for a second there, I thought it was like the variant cover, so I was kind of ignoring it. Then I'm like, wait, that's issue 2. Oh, it's bi-weekly. Oh, oops. So I had to jump on, make sure I ordered issue 1 and issue 2 this last time the pre-orders. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do, how they're doing it, kind of the little bit extra from, because you're not really going to be able to explore the full universe immediately. This will give you a better picture of the full universe.
I would love to see more marketing of the comic, and I'm hoping this happens along the way. Before the comic comes out, marketing towards gamers.
Yeah.
Marketing towards people who are interested in the MMO. The reason why is because I really think that this is an opportunity, as any of them are, to really get people who aren't reading comics interested in the original medium. This is a tie-in that goes along with the game. There's going to be a lot of people that play this game that are gamers, that like superheroes, that are interested in superhero films and things like that don't read comics. Great chance for them to pick up a comic tie-in. They did a World of Warcraft comic. I don't know how much that was marketed towards people who play Warcraft, or if it was just, to comic fans who play World of Warcraft. But I'm hoping that this comic gets marketed towards people who aren't reading comics. Those of us that are reading them, let's be honest, we're pretty savvy as far as paying attention to what books are coming out. This is one that I'm particularly excited about because I have a funny feeling it's going to be a mini-series that can be read independently of the game, but then if you're playing the game, there's little Easter eggs and
there's
things in there.
There's little bits to see and all that, yeah.
Yeah, and I like that. I like an expansion of my gaming environment, especially something where we don't know what monthly fees are going to be for that yet, or if there are going to be them, and whatever that's going to be. But I would love to expand that gaming world, that gaming environment, and see what that's like. So for me, that's a thing of excitement. Do you see yourself more excited to play a hero or a villain, or are you going to play both? I know, like City of Heroes for me, when they came out with their villains add-on, I was super excited for it, because I'm like, oh, this is cool, I get to play as a villain. I never play as a villain. I just don't, I like being a hero. And that's not any knock on the game for that, but in the DC universe, like, I love books like Secret Six, for example. So there is that part of me that's like, well, could I? But the Six, part of what I enjoy about them is, yes, they're villains, but there's a shade of gray there to them. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see how that's all going to play out. What do you see yourself doing?
I see myself playing a hero. I do enjoy being the hero. I enjoy the dun-da-da moments, kind of. But because when you mentioned City of Heroes, when the Villains expansion came out, I was gung-ho, and I don't play it either, but part of the reason I don't play a villain was I couldn't get nasty enough. I'm like, if I'm going to play a villain, I want to get nasty. I want to be able to just, to walk down the street and kill innocent people, or, go target, like, the cops, or the various super police force kind of deal. I want to be able to do something, evil if I'm going to be an evil character. And there was always limits, and they kind of made it game-driven, and I see them doing that same thing with the DCU. It's going to be game-driven, but, part of me would like to go after Batman. Even though I know I'm going to get my butt kicked, I still would like to go after him, or go after Superman, or
I'd like to go after my friend, though. Like, what would be fun is if you and I knew we could do a mission where I played as a villain, you played as a hero. We're independent for part of it. I know there's going to be bits where, if I remember correctly, back in New York, and I'm going back when they originally were talking about this, I thought they said that there's going to be intersections during missions, like task forces, like we're on City of Heroes, where if you're doing this big mission, if you're a villain character, you would encounter heroes that are players during the missions at that point in time, and whoever wins a particular battle will affect the outcome of the overall mission. I think that's what they said they were going to do. Ideally, what would be cool as the game grows, or maybe this will happen out of the start, I have no idea, would be the ability for two friends to say, log on as your villain, I'll log on as my hero, let's run this mission opposite sides.
Yeah.
Now, that would be an incentive for me to have a villain character for us to, because how fun would it be to know that during this mission, we are going to encounter each other, and we are going to beat each other up.
Yeah. And then you can always
now, there's an incentive to be a little evil.
And you can always do the curse you. I would have gotten away with if it wasn't for you.
So I'm hoping that there is more opportunity for that. And I guess where I think the distinction is in City of Heroes and City of Villains, we don't have that option.
Yeah.
In missions, and because I'm a story fan in the games, I'm not a big fan of. They do have player versus player in there, and I know there's a lot of fans out there listening going, guys, there's tons of player versus player in City of Heroes or in MMOs in general. I don't do a lot of that. I like the stories. That's what draws me into an MMO. So a mixture of the story in player versus player, where all of a sudden you can go up against other players mid-story. Yeah. I would really dig that. Especially if the fact that losing doesn't mean the mission's over for you. It changes the story for you. There's a direct impact to your failure. And yet you can still complete the storyline. To a certain, maybe not to the complete positive. Right. Yeah. That to me would be fun because there would be then a reason to play those storylines again to try and win. And I like that. That adds a real sense of danger to those missions and to those stories, and a reason to go over and play arcs again and again and again. So I'm hoping we see stuff like that. I thought they said that that was going to happen in the sense where you'd be able to fight each other mid-arc. I don't know that means it would affect the story or not, though. But that would be an ideal down the road, a wish list for me that I would like to see, would be that a confrontation between you and me, one as a hero, one as a villain, we could, laugh at each other later saying, hey, man, I screwed up your mission for you.
Yeah.
Whatever side you fall on, that would be a huge incentive for me to play a bad guy.
Oh, definitely.
We'd both have bad guys. We both would
do that then. Mm-hmm. For that exact reason.
Wait, and we would go back through and replay and say, okay dude, we just finished that mission. Yeah. Let's swap now and do that, because it would be fun. So I'm hoping we get stuff like that along with it. I'm hoping after this 26-issue series that there's enough interest in the series to do another one. Because I'm a big fan of gaming worlds tied into comics, to multimedia. And I'm hoping those type of things are stuff that we see, because the comic experience for me is just a wonderful experience, and I do think it ties nicely into the gaming world. And it is my hope that MMO players, RPG players, and stuff like that have an opportunity, who have never read comics, have an opportunity to see comics through games like this, and hopefully get hooked, because that to me, role-playing stories are typically serialized, ongoing stories. They usually have an ending point, but that audience is like ready, marketed, tapped to read comics. It just is kind of a no-brainer to me. Going on to another media source, stepping away from gaming for a bit, Smallville lately has just been plain brilliant. We had the Earth 2 episode recently, and then this week's episode as well, where we got to see Clark's proposal to Lois, which I
was so glad it happened.
Yeah, me too.
That was something I was worried that it wouldn't happen until the end of the season, or even not at all, and just it's assumed it'll happen. I was glad that we got to see the moment, and that was a true Clark and Lois, a really great Lois and Clark proposal where everything, all his plans she just kept shooting out. Oh no, I don't want to go to that fancy restaurant. Oh no, I don't want to do that. Why don't we just? And you can just see him going, dang it, I had this great romantic plan laid out, and Lois Lane is throwing it off. I was dying.
Do you think we'll see a wedding on the show?
I don't know if we'll see a wedding. I would actually like to see
I was with you. I was thinking that I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I was with you in your comments that I thought this was going to be later in the season. So I was just assuming, like, if we were going to get the proposal, we would get that, and then there would be... Being that it's at this, like, halfway point right now, I'm kind of like, well, now is there an option for the wedding?
Yeah. I don't know. It could be one of those very end things where it's the the series finale kind of deal where they're just showing it and not make it a big adventure type of deal, but they would be kind of I would say dropping the ball a little bit if they don't make this wedding a big, huge spectacle and have something happen in the middle of it, and just that whole kind of craziness. Have this moment right before the big battle would be the wedding kind of deal. I don't know.
You're kind of convincing me now that we probably aren't going to see it for just everything you're saying, because I think there's so much going on. I don't know how they would fit it in. I assumed all along there would be no possibility at all, but seeing this here and now just made me go, wow. Ollie Queen, with what he's going through right now, it's very similar to the comics, actually. His identity is known in the comics right now. It's known on Smallville. Ollie being very careful on how he has to interact with the members of Watchtower and every move that he makes. What do you think about that? Are you enjoying the character of Oliver Queen on this? How do you think about his development this season?
Well, this has been just a great usage of that little extra thought into a character. Because, just that whole... When he makes the comments about how I can't be seen with you guys because they know I'm Green Arrow, that right there is just a little attention to detail, that little extra piece of thought that I really liked seeing that. And I kind of like the fact that we're getting into this really big, huge Big Brother is watching conspiracy theory kind of, this is the world that all of the conspiracy theorists are really afraid would happen, where this government entity, this government agency is really suspending civil, rights of humans. They completely suspended, this episode where the Doctor with Tess and Lois were held without, charges, held without questioned, without an attorney present. Look at all the civil liberties that were suspended because of their potential, association with known terrorists. And this is just it's one of those things where art imitating life, kind of pulling in some conspiracy of the extreme of what could happen. And when I watch this kind of stuff, I do enjoy seeing that, and I enjoy seeing these connections and the tie-ins, and just, it's a whole nother faction of the superhero story.
I'm very sad this is, like, I told my wife when I was watching the last two episodes, that Earth 2 one and this one, I told my wife, I said, I'm really sad. And she goes, why? And I said, because this is ending. Because I just see limitless possibilities on where this show could go in the future. There's so many great storylines, because they're pulling from the Legends storyline and using that as a framework. Now, granted, they're also pulling from that. They're pulling from things that happened to the JSA and America versus JSA, and then, JSA giving up their mantles and stuff that went on over time. And then, obviously, there's some elements of Civil War and things like that are even being brought into this to a certain extent, with this whole Registration Act kind of concept. So there's a lot of comic elements that have happened in comics thematically throughout the years that they're pulling from and bringing into television in a modern version that really is working quite well. I love Legends being used, though, because I loved that storyline when it came out, and it's amazing how well it just still works today. That people would be feeling this way, and they would be scared and sensationalized by our media.
As well as the influence by Darkseid.
Right.
You know, there's this whole nasty, just evil that's in there that's affecting people's thought, affecting how we look at things and how what we believe. You know, these truths that we know are now being warped and twisted a little bit, and that's the key. It's not big dramatic things immediately. These were done over time. It was a nice slow build. Then every time there's a new piece of the thing to add, new piece of evidence. Look at this. Aquaman destroyed these oil wells. And this, well, those weren't really oil wells, but the everyday man doesn't know that.
Right.
You know, look at it. He did this. He did that. It was just this little...
Slade even used that. I mean, the whole campaign used that.
Yeah,
against him.
I love seeing just the little subtle manipulations. It's a slowly turning the knife. It's that... We saw that in World Against Superman story arc, you know, back with the war on the Kryptons and with, you know, Planet Krypton, the new Krypton and all that, how they were slowly making, you know, Lane was slowly making people turn against Kryptonians. Then they'd slowly start turning against Superman. It was Supergirl, and just all the things associated with Superman were slowly becoming the bad guys, even though they were heroes. And it was just that nice slow play, which we're seeing in the comic, in the, you know, TV show, and that's something that I love seeing. That's just a great way to handle it, and it's a very realistic way to turn people against, you know, these known heroes.
Clark's choice to put Slade in the Phantom Zone. What did you think of that?
I liked it. You know, it was... I suspected that's what he was going to do.
I did too.
You know, because so it wasn't a really surprise, but I do like the fact that he pulled Slade out of it, because we know Slade is full-on influenced by Darkseid.
Yeah.
So that's another kind of deal to it. On one hand, part of me would like to have seen them maybe tried to cleanse Slade, but, you know, they cleanse Slade and he's really still just Slade. But, you know, it's a good way, you know, he is
a good point, yeah.
You know, this is Slade we're talking about.
Yeah.
And when they first introduced him, I was a little bit upset because Slade is one of my favorite villains, and the actor they had playing him, I'm like, yeah, Slade is old school. Did
you watch Battlestar Galactica?
No.
Okay, that's watching Battlestar Galactica. I loved that they made him Slade.
Oh, okay. See, yeah, I didn't really know. I just
Colonel Ty in Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, I just saw the older guy, and I'm like, man, yeah, okay, you know. And then later on, you start seeing him he's got his, you know, the second episode, he got his upgrades, and so he's actually able to fight and throw down and, you know, hold his own. And, you know, well, we saw what else he was able to do, kind of. Sorry, Sean. Yeah.
No, it was great. No, let's talk about that, because it was the second or third or whatever Hawkman and His Amazing Friends episode.
Yeah.
And I've got to be honest with you, they gave Hawkman, I thought, an upgrade on this one. I really love the visual styling. I love what they did with the wings.
Yeah.
I didn't have any issue at all with the wings retracting.
No.
Which at first when I saw it, I'm like, ooh, how do I feel about that? And I'm like, well, it looked cool, so let's go. And one thing I liked about it was, obviously they retracted the wings so we could focus on the fact that he was using the mace to battle Slade.
Yeah.
And it was just a really massive battle. I thought they made him look very good. Right from the whole fly-in to the heroic moment where he dove out, flaming, and went after Lois.
Went after Lois. That was awesome.
Part of me thought, I'm like, okay, this is where Clark's going to come in and save Lois. I loved that it was Carter that did it. He was dying, but his dying act was to save Clark's love for him. You know, just such a cool moment of, you know, a hero saying, all right, Slade, you think you've got us. You know, this is kind of my, you know, back at you, dude. You know, and it was a great moment. I really loved the actor. And the great thing is, with the way that they've established that Shira has not returned, this is a great, you know, are we going to see Carter again this season? I don't know. There's an opportunity for that to happen later in the season. I'd love to see it. Yeah. If not, I thought it was a good ending that left open the opportunity for Hawkman and Hawkgirl to return in our minds. You know, that their story's not done.
I think we're going to see them again. I think this is in the final battle. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to pull in as many superheroes as they can in the big final battle, and I think we'll see a new actor playing Hawkman. Obviously, can't be, you know.
Why?
Well, I'm assuming we'll see a new actor, just because you figure if he's reborn, what are the odds of him being reborn?
Well, but if you take a look at take a look historically, though, in the storytelling of Carter and Shira. They've had them look very similar.
Yeah,
throughout history, like when you look at Cinnamon and back in the Old West days, I don't know that they need to do different actors. I guess I'm more leaning towards that they might, and you might be right. Maybe they'll recast just for that moment, but I'm kind of leaning towards they'll use the same actor again because I'm with you that it would be a quick thing where we see that they were reincarnated for the final battle and to be there and a part of it if they show. Because he did leave that part at the end where he said, "I'm sorry that I can't be there with you this time
when you face the darkness."
So I don't know, if that's not more of a passing of the torch to this new generation, or I don't know. But I loved it. I loved the episode. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was a great way for Hawkman to be used. The character died, but it left open the immediate opportunity that this death isn't the end for Hawkman. I'm not a big fan in these comic book films and TV shows and stuff like that with them killing characters we don't normally see die. You know what I mean? Like if they killed Green Arrow tomorrow, I'd be ticked.
Angry. Yeah.
Because I'm like, what's the point in doing that? Hawkman made sense. We're used to him dying. It happens.
And he's died in his character on the TV show has died 1,000 times. Mm-hmm. So it's something that they wrote into the character. They made sure that the Smallville audience who doesn't know anything about Hawkman knows that this is normal for him. So I thought that was a cool way to make sure that everybody knew that, yes, this character's dead. Yes, he can come back later.
There was hope in that moment, though, and that worked for me. Was it just, obviously me, I've got glowing eyes when it comes to seeing Hawkman on the screen. Was it me, or was this episode like a step up for the character, though, as far as visually how they used him on screen? It just looked, to me, it looked better than it ever has.
Yeah, I agree, and I think part of the reason was because of the collapsible wings, and the Hawkman wings, it does look cool, and I like the character, but there is something quote-unquote comic bookish or kind of goofy when you got this guy with these big, huge wings trying to fight, and they're very rigid, but getting rid of that, it gives him back his full body flexibility kind of deal.
They weren't rigid in this one, though. I guess that's what I'm saying, where the upgrade was, these were fully flowing, moving wings, which I don't remember that in his previous appearances. In the previous appearances, agreeing 110% with what you're saying, the wings were very rigid, and it doesn't work as well visually when you got a guy fighting. Like, the retractable wings, I don't know that I needed them to retract because of how cool they looked when they were flowing the way that they were. So for me, I think it would have worked in either way. I agree with you that the retractable wings worked, so we're totally in sync there. But there was something visually different with the CG they used on the wings this time.
Right.
They just looked better to me. Like, I would have been happy seeing him throwing down with the mace with those wings flowing all over the place because they weren't so rigid. But I don't know, maybe you disagree with me on that.
Well, I think it's a difference of prop wings versus CGI wings. Mm-hmm. This time, and that's why they had that fluid, the more fluid when they're active, and I think that would have made it would have been harder on the actual technical side of the show to keep the wings, so that's why they made it so
agreed. And it worked for me. But if they had gone and kept the CG wings going, I think it would have looked just as, in some ways I think it would have looked even cooler. That's just me. Because the CG wings, I noticed it immediately when he came crashing through the window and you saw them flow around him. I'm like, oh my gosh, does that look cool?
Yeah.
He actually looked very Black Condor-ish in a certain extent of what I'm liking in Freedom Fighters with Black Condor. It worked on television for Hawkman. And it was a good move this time around to do that. I really dug it. I was like sitting there thinking to myself, like, okay, TV series, let's go. We got it right here. And keep him keep him as the actor on it, because I really loved the chance for him, he and Ollie, the interplay with the two, and how they were bonding over the engagement, and how Carter actually, you got to see him, this brash person who before didn't seem to have a whole lot of respect for Ollie. You saw him sitting there and connecting with Ollie over loss. Knowing Ollie went through what he did with Chloe, having that emotional moment of sitting here and saying, hey, just so you know, I'm really sorry for what you went through. I've lost my wife many, many times. It never gets any easier. I'm here, kind of a fist pump moment,
kind
where
of
it was
a little punch in the arm. I'm here for you, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, where these are two characters that didn't connect, and you saw the two of them, there was still the back and forth Ted and Ted over the computer and stuff like that, with Carter's age showing and stuff like that. I loved it because it didn't take away from the witty banter between the two characters, but it showed some evolution that over time, Carter's gotten to know who Ollie is, Ollie's gotten to know who Carter is, and there is a respect between the two of them.
Yeah.
In this dark hour, they're the underground, and the two of them are not backing away. They're still fighting the good fight at a time, and this is truly heroic. There's no accolades for them. Ollie got beat up in the street for doing the right thing. It shows you where, times have changed and just how twisted this world is. I loved it. I think it was just a great episode. Shifting back an episode beforehand, let's talk about Earth 1 and Earth 2. Because that was an episode that was written by Brian Q. Miller, and forgive me, I didn't take a look who wrote this week's, but the week before was written by Brian Q. Miller of Batgirl. And we got to see Ultraman.
Yeah.
What did you think of all that and how it played out? That obviously some slight changes tweaks into what Ultraman was, but totally fitting the Smallville world. Did it work for you?
Oh, definitely worked for me. And it's funny because, in a way, it is Earth 2 because we have an evil version of Superman, but it really wasn't Earth 2 because the heroes weren't villains and the villains weren't heroes. Lionel Luthor was still a villain and still evil. Green Arrow, Ollie was still a good guy. Lois was still a good person. And it was just really that one kind of shift story arc.
One different choice.
Yeah. What if Clark had been raised by the Luthors and not raised by the Kents. I thought that was just a really great way to play it out.
Ollie
just
did change, though, because of the fact that due to that situation, Ollie's role and what he does, with what he was doing with the farms and shutting them down and things like that, were all steps that he had to take due to that situation. So the world was different due to it. But it fits the whole theme of the multiverse. With the original concept was one different choice, one pivotal different event can send trickles down and change everything. And I really, really liked that episode. It was a great use of Clark kind of seeing, I've really got to step up in my world, otherwise look what it could be. Plus, which I did not see coming, it returned Lionel to our world.
Yeah, nice. Now, the big question I'm wondering is, did Lionel jump in on, Clark's, stream?
At the end, we saw him coming at him. Remember at the end of the episode where when Clark was making the twist, Lionel was running up behind him? I totally took it that was when that happened.
He piggybacked on his streak.
Yes.
Okay.
He must have grabbed him along the way or just been in such a proximity that he came flowing on through. Because Ultraman was convinced on the other side that Tess was his Tess come through.
Well, initially.
Yes. What I'm saying is, though, so when did he think she came through? And it was cool to see him in our world. And it's interesting to see Lois. To me, it showed her strength of character. Visually, the way he carries himself, to certain extents, that was Clark. So for her to have to realize that when Clark returned and look at him and be able to see in him, oh my gosh, this is my guy back again.
This is Clark back.
I loved that moment. I loved where she was all ready to go at him, and she was the one that told them all to stand down. It's actually really him. A powerful moment that actually shows the strength of their relationship and how well she really knows him. It's not a surface level thing. She knows him internally, inside and out, who he is, mannerisms, right down to the core. I really liked how that played out at the end with the two of them. They could do a whole series. I'd watch a whole series on that other Earth.
Yeah. And the thing I digged was with
Dark Smallville.
Yeah. Well, when he right before Clark makes the transformation, he's like, "Hey, he's going to come back in my place. Get ready to take him down." And as he's transforming, you hear kind of in the background, "Hit it now! Hit it now!" So they're kicking on the green, for Ultraman coming over, and who knows what happened there because Ollie was ready for a Kryptonian. To come back, ready for him to come back through.
But don't you want to see?
Yeah, I want to know. I really do want to know.
That's a sign of a good episode, if you do an alternate Earth where you actually care enough about that alternate Earth that you want to see what happened. I would love to see that. And how Ultraman over there, it was a reverse blur. nobody lives that sees
Sees his-
Ultraman,
yeah.
and those moments were like, and Lois was terrified of that.
Yeah.
But yet Lois started to bend and realize that, wait a minute,
Who is this person? This
is not Ultraman.
Yeah, this is
and,
not-
and I actually
yeah.
believe him, and that was, and Ollie had to bend over to that in that.
Well,
world.
eventually, yeah, it was funny. I kind of chuckled when Ollie realized, yeah, I know, you're the good one. Okay, I heard, I got you.
Right. But I like those moments. Justin Hartley, who plays Oliver Queen, I think
Yes.
is just brilliant in that role. That's a series I would love to see a Green Arrow series
Yeah.
spin out of this. I would follow that. I know did you see that there's talks of a Raven series? I don't know how far in development that is, but that might be the next series
Really?
after Smallville, a Raven series in development. Taking that character
Wow.
and putting her on television. But I think there's room for more than one. And to me, it would be a real waste if they don't do something
Yeah, they got to
with
get this.
Justin
yeah.
Hartley as Oliver Queen. I really think that character is very interesting, and there's so much more to do with him.
Yeah, and it's funny because I saw that where he was playing Aquaman, the
Mercy Reef?
Mercy Reef series, and I thought it was a neat show. I was like, yeah, I'd probably watch that. But to be honest with you, I'm so much more into how he is as Green Arrow and where this is going, and I see a lot more out of that could happen out of the Green Arrow TV series than I could out of that Aquaman series.
Well, except for, think about it, the Aquaman series, we got one episode.
Right,
We've seen him develop as Green Arrow for how long now?
I agree.
Let me say this, I 100% agree with you, but I'm totally convinced the reason why I'm so sold on him is because we've gotten to see this actor really develop this character and grow over time, to the point where his Green Arrow is super cool. The funeral sequence with Hawkman, at the end, we got to see these heroes, Black Canary brought in, and Stargirl obviously back again, and Ollie, being pallbearers with Lois there. What happened to them at the end? This white thing came out of the ground. They were all knocked out. Now, I'm assuming that was the bad guys, right?
That's what I'm assuming, too. It was an ambush kind of deal. They knew eventually he'd die, and eventually they go back to that tomb, so they planted something, or...
Not eventually they knew that he died. I think they knew that he died because Slade killed him. And set the trap.
No, the bad guys... I think they set the trap before they knew Slade killed them. I think the bad guys set the trap figuring eventually Hawkman's going to die. Eventually they're going to be in that tomb. And when they are, boom, we drop the trap on them.
See, I'm going to say that I think they did this after Hawkman died, laying a trap, knowing this is going to be our chance to get them all in one spot.
Yeah.
Showing how strong their intel really was, how much they really knew about Carter Hall. I think it's what we saw in this episode with how much background. I mean, they knew about Clark, they knew about Ollie, they knew a lot of information. Maybe not every little fine detail, because they were certainly searching for more, but this was their chance to get them. Interesting cliffhanger, because I think they're in a whole heap of trouble, and especially from the previews that were showing afterwards, Clark losing his powers.
Yeah, I'm thinking those are all mental stuff. They're doing some type of mind game.
They said they experimented on him,
Yeah.
so I don't know physically. I don't know what happened. I'm very curious to see what happens next season. That is a Smallville staple, though, isn't it? Clark losing his powers.
Yeah. Like you can do other stuff.
I hope it's very short. Yeah. Well, I don't mind them doing
episode, and he'll
if it's very short term, I have no issue with it. I'm very curious, and honestly, I'm just as curious to see what happens to the others. What happens to Ollie? What happens to Lois?
Yeah,
she's there. How many of them are going to be?
Because here's the thing I always thought you could do, and someone may have already thought of this idea and maybe in a story somewhere, I don't know. But you sit there, you use some kryptonite to knock Clark out, or magic, or whatever thing. Then you take a piece of blue kryptonite and you attach it to his heart. So he's got that blue kryptonite right on the heart, so it's hard to operate on it, because he'll be a human, kind of deal, and then boom, you got Superman, no powers.
See, and for me, when I think of Superman, I don't plot his demise. I actually, I like Superman, so I don't, I just don't do that. But
it's the goatee.
Yeah, well, I've got one too. It's funny how you plot it away. If I could, here's what I'd do.
Right. Well, sometimes you just got to be a little evil.
Was it like Evil Tuesday for you?
Yeah, it depends on
the comics aren't quite out yet. It's like, you've read everything. What are you going to do?
Being a bad guy.
You're a little
today.
evil. Evil Tuesday with Jim.
With James.
With James. Oh, that's I see.
James is evil.
Get a little bit more formal and proper. What are there any hopes you have for Smallville? As far as, are there characters you want to see back, or is there events that you desperately need to see happen now? This season's been delivering a lot of surprises for me. Is there something for you that you're like, I really need to see this before the season is done?
I don't. Well, obviously the costume, which I know we're gonna get. I do have to see Tom in the costume, and and I want it to be for the final battle. I want the costume to be the thing that rallies the people and gives them hope. And they're like, the blur is no longer a blur. We have a physical form that is the blur. I want that dun 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 kind of moment where he's flying into and I want to see him fly. Those are the two things that really I'm holding on to. That I want to see him fly.
I'm with you.
And I want to see him fly into the final battle. I do want to see that, and I would love to see a scene with him catching the Daily Planet globe and then flying it to the top, or just those iconic moments,
beats,
those iconic moments that you get.
I'm hoping it's a 2-hour finale.
Oh God, yeah.
I don't want to see it split up over a couple episodes. I'd like to see that battle occur, like do a movie like what they did with the JSA one. Do it huge and make it like
Let's
really
do this
just
right.
Like one heck of a send off at the end. That would be my dream for it. It's funny you talked about the costume. I'm less and less interested in whether or not he dons. I'll geek out just like everybody else. The flying thing I'm more interested in. I like how he's evolving to be more super. Like, I liked the change to this new red leather jacket, and the blue and stuff like that, thematically, color-wise. I like the way he's acting now. I like that he does his hair a little bit different when he's dressed up in that, and those type of things. I want to see the costume, don't get me wrong, but it's funny how the evolution of Clark that we've seen this season has kind of... I just want to see more of that, more of him thematically evolving. I like that it's not dependent on the suit; it's dependent on his behavior. He's becoming more confident in being a hero and taking more of that role in this universe. I like him feeling like I would follow him in the battle. So you talk about that end battle. I want to see the heroes rallying behind him and following him as the general against Darkseid. Yeah. That's what I want. I mean, that's that, and I'm looking forward to that. I don't care what he wears. He can wear a bear suit. I'll make that work for me, I guess. As long as the colors are right.
Yeah. The red and blue bear.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. Rawr. Up in a ray.
Oh, God. Stop, because
you want to talk about this on Evil Tuesday? No, it's honestly, I'm with you. I either want that current outfit that he has now for the final battle, or, like you said, the suit.
Yeah.
And I don't care which. I don't mind the Smallvilleization of the costumes. I'm very used to that. Some of the costume choices they made really... Like Green Arrow's suit. I think Green Arrow's suit really works for television.
Oh, definitely.
He looks cool.
Yeah.
I would love to wear that suit. It just, you look like somebody on the street, like you'd be intimidated by him. The hood makes sense. The sunglass, the goggle glasses look makes sense as far as hiding his face. I love the way he distorts his voice. Those things all work to kind of cover who you are. And the hood would give him a shadow over his face to hide his identity as well. It works. It all just works. Those type of things I've never minded on the series. I just think it's been really, really great. I am very sad to see it go. I can't. There's a short list of TV series that by the time they hit this point, that I was sad to see them go. I'm glad it's getting an ending, where it's going to have a nice definitive ending. But I'm very sad to see that because this season has just shown to me there's limitless possibilities.
I know, and once again, just the return of some characters I would like to see. Obviously, I want to see Lex come back, and I want it to be Michael Rosenbaum.
Well, that's for sure that we're getting Lex back. I don't know if we're getting Michael Rosenbaum, but Lionel and Lex meeting up.
Right. Yeah, and I do want that. And I'd like to see Chloe again physically back in the thing, because Allison Mack was awesome. And Bart let's bring back Bart, and just all these different characters that they've had over the time. Bring them back into the picture, and just bring them back in the fold. Just as we said, just that one final epic battle, all of them working together. Because you think Darkseid, there's got a lot of minions to be fought, so you're going to need a full cast of characters to fight these minions. And even if they introduce people just for the fight scene, like they've introduced some of the classic JSA members, we didn't get a Wildcat. Maybe Wildcat makes his appearance. Alan Scott, can jump in and just have an expanded JSA recurring. And
the only catch would be, and I'm a little leery of that to a certain extent, if it's not established that where those characters have been.
Why weren't they
around in to begin with? And I think you can overdo that. I'm with you in the sense that a lot of these characters have been established, should come back.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll bring them all in for appearances. We got to see Black Canary back recently, for example. That's
and
great.
Aquaman back with Mira,
back, right. There's an opportunity for a new Dr. Fate to show up. There's an opportunity, things that have been established before can pop back in again, if necessary. It depends on what this final battle actually is.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big decided, is it going to be Granny Goodness, the Female Furies, Darkseid, all these people.
See, I think we're going to get it. I'm hoping we get it all. I want to see the Furies, and that's, again, where we could bring back, Zatanna. We bring back, Black Canary, let Canary
I'd love to see Zatanna back. Yeah. Zatanna was awesome.
Oh, yeah. And just all these different cool characters that they had, just bring them all in there. Have Lois throwing down, Tess throwing down with the Furies, and just while that's going on, you segment here, segment there, then bam, main battle, boom, boom.
Tess, we haven't really talked about this. Tess is a Luthor.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
I like it.
I did
definitely.
Too, yeah.
I thought it was a cool thing when especially when they first started expanding on it. I'm like, her parents. I'm like, is she a Luthor? And that was the first I kind of thought, I'm like, holy crud, she's a Luthor, isn't it? And sure enough, when the car's riding away, you see Luthor 1. I'm like, she's a Luthor, sweet! And I like that. I was glad to see that.
I love that even though they made her a Luthor, she's still on the side of the Angels. She's always had that gray area, but we got to see at the end that the truth of the matter is her intentions are good.
Yeah.
And, she really is a part of Team Superman, this whole group that's Watchtower. I was glad to see that. I like her character, and I was glad that she was back this season. And I'm glad that, because I saw her potentially turning with the whole Lex thing, and I'm glad it didn't happen. And I'm glad that she had to face her own mistakes of what she wanted to do to her own scars.
Yeah.
It was great. Very good choices this season.
Oh, definitely. This has been one of those fun, really cool. I'm glad I stuck with this. I'm getting, a nice closure, a nice ending to the story. This is kind of how I do want more, but I understand that this is going to end. And
do we need Lana back?
No. To be honest, and I like the character, and I don't want any consideration knocking on her, but I think her character had kind of a closure and just an ending to her. Granted, it would be nice to see her maybe just make an appearance again, or some type of thing where she, a nod to Clark that he's found his true love kind of deal. That's something I would
and her
like
accepting
to see,
that,
and her acceptance of it. So there is right there is a room for some closure. But in the end, I'm like, I think,
is it necessary?
I don't know.
I like the Chloe bit with Destiny, where she sent that note to Lois. Erica Durance as Lois Lane, bar none, is my favorite Lois Lane now.
Yes,
it just
she has now surpassed Terry Hatcher for me, and Terry for the longest time was just this great Lois Lane that I was like, I can understand why Clark would be in love with her. I can understand why she is needed in the Superman lifetime, in the life. And Erica is just completely just taking it, and bam.
This episode, her with Cat Grant, I thought was brilliant. We got to see a very strong Lois, and that's really important. I've got to believe Lois Lane's a strong character. It's okay to have her have vulnerabilities. Clark has vulnerabilities. We see them, and I think that's cool. But you got to see that it's a strong Lois as well, and the way she was able to appeal to Cat Grant and actually make Cat Grant see
that they're heroes.
And really saying, Cat, you're a reporter. This is who you are. You gotta see that this just isn't right. And Cat had to face that, and I loved seeing Cat Grant in those moments, because Cat Grant is not an evil person. She's a little ditzy at times, a little misguided at times, but at the end of the day, we've seen in the comics that Kat at her core is not an evil person.
Yeah, and it's, again, Lois, with her son angle. Who is the kind of person you would want your son to look up to? These are these people. These are the heroes. And I thought that was, again, a great way to, she knows who Kat is. She knows the core. She knows how to get in and touch her. If just said this, if you just said flat out, "Hey, these are the good guys," she may have waned. But that whole, once you start thinking, getting her thinking of her son, getting her thinking of the kind of person she would want her son to be. Would she want her son to do what Slade and the Inquisition are doing? No, she would not want that. And I thought that was a great way to fully pull her into it.
My big question going to be during this is, how does the Suicide Squad play into where things go from here? Are we going to see them? Because they're a wild card in this whole scenario.
And they now know Clark's secret.
Right.
We've seen them fully know Clark's secret. And I'm assuming they all know the secret and not it. Or it could just be Waller and Flag who know it.
Oh, we say Waller and Flag.
But who knows if the operatives know it and where
because Deadshot, there was nothing. Deadshot was supposed to kill Clark. There was nothing indicating that Deadshot knew why.
Yeah, well, Deadshot was told to target Cat Grant, knowing that the blur would save.
The bullet said...
Oh, yeah, it did say
Clark. The bullet said Clark Kent.
Yeah, sorry.
Clark was being targeted.
Okay.
So, be curious to see... I don't feel that means that Deadshot knows that Clark Kent is Superman.
Or they just assumed that the blur would save Clark Kent.
Right. So, I don't know. We'll see. Good season so far.
Definitely.
Holy caffeine!
Jim, a book I really wanted to make sure we had a chance to talk about was Superboy. We planned on talking about the first issue of it, and instead, time-wise, it ended up working out that we're discussing the second issue. But Jeff Lemire is the writer, Pierre Gallo is the artist, Jamie Grant on colors, Sal Cipriano letterer, Phil Noto on the cover, Gilliam March is the variant cover, Will Moss associate editor, and Matt Idelson is the editor. This is one of those books that, it's an interesting trend of books that I'm finding that I'm really enjoying that are books that are fun. Jeff Lemire is writing a fun book here. And when I say fun, this has got all of the depth, all of the excitement, all the joy. And I'm going to be talking about this a lot more lately. This fits into like a Batgirl mode of what I'm enjoying what Brian Q. Miller's doing over in Batgirl. This out of the starting gate, first 2 issues in, great supporting cast. Superboy's a fun character. Still feels like depth, strong character storytelling, but I really enjoy reading it. It's fun. The artwork matches that kind of style. It's a great presentation across the board. It's a good team on this book.
Yeah, it's definite, there's some teen angst kind of deal going on and just the development of who he is, trying to figure out where he fits in. But, because looking at those type of qualities, it could go a little bit darker. He could go a little moody. We're not seeing that with this. We're still seeing the upbeat Connor Kent. We're still seeing an upbeat Superboy. We're getting, these kind of interesting stories. First one opened up with him fighting Parasite. This time we got Poison Ivy in there. And she's just not just thrown in there. There's a reason for her to be there. And I thought that was a cool way to bring just the whole storyline coming through. Parasite went after him for power. Ivy's there in Smallville because of this great kind of like energy, eco-energy, if you will, that's permeating from Smallville that drew her there from Gotham, and she wanted to know why. And I thought that was just a great way to, bring her into it. She's an interesting character, and she's somebody who hasn't gone up against, Connor hasn't gone up against in the past, so guess what? Nice, he's not familiar with her MO, what she's doing, or actually he kind of underestimated her big time because he doesn't know that this isn't just some Batman rogue villain. This is a doctor. She's a very intelligent person. She's a very cunning villain. And we see her completely play Superboy in a way that, he didn't see coming. And I will be honest with you, I was a little bit kind of, I don't want to say surprised when she did the double cross, but I was a little, okay, because I'm used to seeing her in a quasi-hero-esque kind of mode because I
didn't see it coming, but I felt I should have.
Yeah, exactly.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It wasn't surprise isn't the right word because it's Poison Ivy.
Right.
So like when it happened, I'm like, oh yeah, duh. But I was with I actually felt like it's something I love in comics. I felt like I was riding along with Superboy. She smacked him in the face. I got smacked too.
Yeah, I got suckered as well. And part of it,
I loved it.
Well, Gotham Sirens, we've seen her kind of not be full-on evil killing machine type of villain type.
Right.
So you figured, okay, yeah, this maybe Catwoman's rubbed off on her a little bit. Maybe she is, actually honestly trying to look into what's going on. No, she was after power for herself, and she wanted to take it, and just I thought that was just a cool moments where we see this villain who is a solid Batman villain kind of play the kid, and he's got to deal with that. Now, we talk about supporting cast. I thought the Parasite frogs were awesome. I cheered and I laughed and I howled, and I was like, because when they first, that first panel when he's looking at the, he has the sample of Parasite and he's studying it, and he just looks at the frogs and goes, I was like, he's not going to infect those frogs. What, and then sure enough, when they come out the scene, I was like, yeah, I found that funny. I thought that was just a nice way to use them. And it was just, again, we talk about fun stuff in the comic. Those were some fun stuff, but not goofy, slapsticky, over the top type of deal. No, it's a definite reasonable usage of the characters.
The art is something I really like to talk about, because this creative team, talking about the writing and the art, is taking over from Jeff Johns and Francis Manapul, what they were doing in Adventure Comics, which I thought was a pretty perfect book. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I think they kicked it up a notch on something that I already thought was perfect before. This creative team really is just doing a fantastic job on Superboy. The whole right when you open up the book, you got Welcome to Smallville, home of Superboy. And you've got these roots growing all over the place. And Smallville looks like your small town, Main Street. One of my favorite things in Disneyland and Disney World when I go there is I like walking down Main Street, USA. I love that feel of it. Smallville always should feel like Main Street, USA to me. It should feel like that classic old small town. There's something homey about it. Even whether you live there or not, you feel like you could instantly. Like you want to go into every store and everybody's going to say hello to you and all that. And it never loses that feel amidst all this horror, which I think is really, really great. There's something comforting about Smallville. I actually want to talk about Simon as well.
Yeah.
And a character who I thought when they were introducing him, he was going to be Superboy's Lex Luthor. And that's not to say that he couldn't turn down that route. I give him a lot of credit for making him a good guy, though. And seeing this partnership and team up between the two of them where, his goal is to say, I'm useful. My brain, my intellect here, and the things that I can do. I love his journal along the way because it just shows to me, okay, you got a guy here who can really organize Connor and really help him out by catching some bits that Connor might miss. In many ways, acting in a role that Tim Drake acts like with Connor from time to time. Not that Connor's a dummy, I don't mean it that way, but it's being the advisor, being the Alfred, being the the confidant that's there that can kind of, when Superboy's out doing the super things that he needs to do, can catch the small details that Superboy doesn't necessarily have time for.
Well, you think about it. Superman is an investigative reporter. Clark is experienced at looking at the facts and the details and all that kind of stuff. So he has that investigative style to him. He has that detective in him. Connor's still a high school kid. He's still young. He's still learning. He wasn't trained by Bruce to look for the clues like Tim was. He's not a scientific, science superstar, or super brain kind of deal. So he's not stupid, but he just hasn't had that training yet. Simon's the guy who can train him to look at things differently. I like the fact that when Connor first came into that one, with the farmer rigged up to the devices, like, man, I wish Simon was here. Just because he knew Simon would be able to look at this figure, maybe figure out what the device is, maybe figure out how we can, save the farmer and not, just kill him or anything like that. I thought that was just a cool way to acknowledge, Connor's acknowledging that he does need this partner. And down the line, I'm hoping he doesn't turn into his Lex, because I agree with you completely. That was the first thought that popped in my head was, this is going to be his Lex Luthor. This is going to be his, nemesis kind of deal. And I hope to God I'm wrong.
This is better.
Because this is much better, because we think it's going to go one way and it swerves a little and goes the other way. I love that in a story where I think I know where something's going to go and I'm wrong.
Well, even this tablet, this the inside of the machine, you see that there's this ancient, artifact-style thing in there that Simon's starting to analyze with... The two of them are analyzing together. Again, it shows that Connor's not a dolt. He's there right up with Simon. They're having an intellectual conversation about the whole thing. So I do want to clarify that. I don't think Connor's stupid. I love the fact that I really respect Connor throughout the entire issue. That I think Simon adds something there as a confidant and a friend, but I do feel that there is a friendship there where it's a friendship of equals in their own ways, where they each bring something to the table that I really, really dig about the whole thing.
I'm still chuckling. I'm just looking at the parasite frogs. Patent pending. I do love that one panel there where he's got the headphones on, where he's controlling the frogs, and you just see him come flying at her, and she's just like, and they just drain her of her energy, and she goes down. That is just a great usage of something I never thought I would say. Parasite frogs are cool.
But then at the end, here's a great example where it takes a dark turn at the end, where you see the father and the son, and they're trying to take over Smallville. And they're the ones that planted the seeds that caused all of this. Is that how you're taking that?
Yeah. They planted everything, and that device that they couldn't figure out what the purpose of the device was really just a scanner of Connor. They want to know exactly who Connor is, the full scan of the clone. So all they really needed was for just to get his attention, draw him to the source of the problem, bam, it detonates and it shows him.
The tree behind them, if you take a look at it, has those symbols on it. So I'm just curious to see, who these guys are, where they're from, and what the deal is there. Because there's more of a mystery throughout this. And it's one of the things that I like is that it takes this dark turn at the end through all this fun and happy, hope that's throughout the whole thing. I'm a big fan of that kind of balance. Fun adventure story, while at the same time, at the end, you have dark villains that you're like, I really believe these guys, are going to cause some serious problems for Superboy. And there's a mystery of Smallville that I want to find out. I actually care. I want to find out more about the mystery of Smallville.
Exactly. And, they mentioned it in New York, that there's this big mystery surrounding Smallville, and that's what this is going to really explore in this first, and I think it's going to be even the first couple story arcs we're going to be exploring this. And the thing that really, has me wondering is Superman. Why didn't he ever notice it, or are they going to explain why they kept it from, Clark, or is there something going on? Is this something that was dormant and then recently popped up? What's the deal with that?
Well, I'm guessing we're seeing here that this is their first time that they're surfacing.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I'm guessing that is something that's going to be explored in the story. Why now?
And it's funny because
it seemed like a missed opportunity if you didn't.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's funny because with Red Robin and Batgirl, I always like wondering when Bruce is going to make an appearance. Same deal with Superboy. I do wonder if Superman's going to make an appearance in it. But just like with the strength of Batgirl, the strength of Supergirl, and the strength of Superboy, I don't need them in the book for me to truly enjoy it. I don't need Clark in here. Connor, Crypto is wonderful in there. I do like seeing the Connor and Ma Kent interaction kind of deals, because Ma Kent's really cool, and Simon now in there. I'd like seeing he has his own supporting cast, and he doesn't need one of the big guns. He doesn't need Lois in there. He doesn't need Clark in there. Connor Kent is enough of a cool character, enough of a good story that can be fleshed out, that makes Superboy an enjoyable read.
This is totally in Batgirl territory for me. This is totally in Supergirl territory for me. Just a great example of a book where it feels like it's a part of the Superman universe, yet it isn't so stuck to it that there's not an original identity, an original feel to it. It's fun. It's exciting. It fits. This is the kind of book that I want to read month after month. I'm 2 issues in. This totally fits those books, and that's 100% a compliment to this book and those books that I just mentioned. Supergirl and Batgirl, I think, are just fun, great rides with characters who I really care about, with supporting cast who I really enjoy, and it's a nice break from all the darkness.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's like, and there is, at the end of this issue, there's clearly a big darkness sitting right there, that I'm waiting on, yet there's hope in there, and there's excitement, and heroes who I can rally behind that feel very DC. Mm-hmm. A lot of people nowadays will say, well, where's my books that feel very DC? This is a book that feels very DC to me, and it's a book that if you didn't pick up Superboy, do yourself a favor. You don't need to be reading any other Superman book to read this book.
Yeah.
Superboy, right here, great book, great ride, cool character, and this is just another home run for me. Jim, a book I want to talk about, Booster Gold number 39. This was the kind of conclusion of this whole traveling back through time to find out information about Max Lord arc that's been going on. I've liked the way that this book has thematically touched on what's going on in JLA Generation Lost, to the point where they've even had little panels where it said, this is when he came back and popped into Generation Lost, and then, which I thought was funny. I thought it was cool the way that they did that and showed that he's still a part of that book, and explained.
There's a connection.
Explained, panel here, this is where it happened, panel there, we're now back into our book and our story. That's magic of time travel, folks. And it's almost like they're having a little laugh at the fact that they know fans are going to ask that question. When does Booster Gold take place if he's in... And I'm fine with how they did it. I thought it was funny.
The editor notes are awesome. The writer notes are awesome. And the fact that you don't need to read each of the two to fully get the full story. If you're not reading Generation Lost, you can full-on read Booster Gold. If you're not reading Booster Gold, you can read Generation Lost, and you're not missing anything. But it is kind of neat.
They echo, but they're not dependent.
Exactly.
And I really like that about the books as well. This has been interesting in this arc with issue number 39. And why do I really want to talk about this? I love how the culmination of this whole thing, first of all, we see Skeets is evolving and almost has this jealousy about Ted, hey, I'm your pal here too.
Yeah.
I'm a little, and I like that Skeets seems to be becoming a little bit more sentient. But beside all that, Boosters had to face the fact that Ted is not coming back. And with throughout this book's 38 previous issues, I should say, Ted's appeared multiple times. And, he's looked at different opportunities to try and bring Ted back. I love the constant references to the fact that Superman was back.
Yeah.
And Boosters had to actually face off with villains who have taken, in this issue, a kid who is heading down the quote-unquote vigilante villain path and all that. And, Boosters trying to say, you need to understand something. Heroes really do die. They don't all come back. And he actually totally turns on the kid and goes, and realizes he's angry at Ted for not coming back.
Yeah. And, well, that's
Ollie came back. Hal came back. Clark came back. Ted did not come back. And it looks like Ted's not going to come back.
Yeah, and that's just a very real, true human reaction. And I love seeing that out of Booster. Because, he is, has the persona of the big goofball. And then, we know the hero that, no one knows through his time travel adventures kind of deal. But there's also is a little bit of the clown, a little bit of the comical, a little bit of the fun that is Booster Gold. There is a seriousness to him. There is a true hero element, but he does like to keep things light and fun. But there's this little part of him that has anger. That is, it's... I don't want to say it's still a mourning process, but it could be that. There's multiple things you think about this. This is grief counseling that he's dealing with. This is just the death of his friend that he's confronted and he's faced and he's tried to fix, but he's never really let it go. He's still held on to it. And there's still that piece that he's holding on to, and he's finally, kind of has his full-on closure and his rest and at peace with it. Kind of. It's something that you never really 100% are done with, but you can learn to live beyond. And he's starting to show that, and he's doing that.
Well, this issue, we see him start to embrace the life that he's been ignoring that's going on around him. This little girl that came back, and during the whole Great Darkness saga, that came back with him, kind of tagged along. His sisters here. We got Rip here. This is a life that he hasn't been 100% in because he's been... And going back into the past for seemingly noble reasons as far as going after Max Lord and saying everything he said made sense. I thought he was genuinely going back for clues for Max and that Ted was just there. But realizing that all along it was about the fact that he's never let himself have closure. Never let himself say goodbye to Ted. And I think seeing the gravestones at the end throughout time shows us that, Ted's dead and gone. And I liked that, though. I really actually liked seeing that part. Go ahead.
And I like the fact that with all those gravestones through its time, we see the flowers there. So we know Booster is still visiting the graves in all the different times, making sure that, there's flowers on the grave, and it is honored and marked that a true hero is there. I thought that, for me, was just a cool thing to just, throughout it, that, it's...
When you die, I promise I will visit your grave on Evil Tuesday.
Oh, thank you.
That's assuming that you die first.
Yeah.
That could very well be me. In that case, you have to do the same for me.
Okay,
when you visit my grave, it has to be on an Evil Tuesday.
On Evil Tuesday.
You know what? And honestly, the reason why I even mentioned that, joking around about us, is one thing I've enjoyed about the journey with them is I'm fortunate enough in my life that I have friends such as yourself, and who I consider like family. And I see this with Booster and Ted, and I get where he's coming from. I get why it's so hard for him to let that go. I love this kind of stuff because I think it's a real, yes, there's humor in this book, but there's some real emotional, real-world drama in this book that I think we all connect with. I would hope everybody listening to this is fortunate enough to have friends like this, where you have that kind of relationship that their death matters, and it would really bother you if that person was no longer there, that person was gone in your life. They're the person you can be vulnerable with. You can be yourself. You can have those moments where it's just kind of like, okay, I'm off today. And that person's going to understand who you are at your core.
Yeah.
And respect you still at the end of that whole event and that whole episode. And, we have that relationship. That's something where I love that about this book, and I really dug it.
And the thing is, we have these cool, personal moments, and it's not becoming, a romantic comedy kind of, tears, shedding kind of, I don't know how. It's not, sappy. There's still some cool elements going on in this. There's still some really cool fight sequences we've had throughout these sequences as he's going back in time. Had some cool moments where he's up against some Nazis and beating up Nazis and doing his booster thing, kind of, to make sure preserve the timeline type of deal. But there are these interlocking within these real humanistic moments, these really emotional moments that, it just... You mentioned it before with that vigilante kid. Just him just grabbing the kid by the shirt collar, and it's like, they don't always come back. And it's just that anger and that rage in this kid saying, hey, this is not the path to go. And I thought that, those kind of just moments where you're reading a comic going, whoa, wow, cool. And the setup for the villains, the next round of villains that he's going to be dealing with, that's probably going to be hunting him down. It's, just a little snapshot of who they're up against. Obviously, there's some meta powers as they're able to teleport the file into his hand. So there's something, it's not just about just Booster saying goodbye to Ted. It's laying the groundwork for the next story arc. And that's something that Booster has done throughout its whole thing, where they keep building the next story. There's a little bit here that plays out later.
Yeah.
There was a scene in issue 6 that played out later in issue 21.
Yeah.
And that right there was just a huge statement. And you go back, when you're reading 21, you go back to 6, you're like, oh, look at that. That's the same, panel, and it's sure, it's stuff like that I really dig.
Booster and Ted, you see this, these moments with them where Ted, in this arc, recognized that it was Booster from the future and that he was different.
Yeah.
And calls him on it multiple times. And I love that he's asking for, tell me this, tell me that, tell me this, tell me that. It was some great moments between the two of them where you see that Booster and Ted, while it is the old friends getting back together again, Booster has matured. He's not the same guy. He doesn't quite fit in exactly the same with Ted anymore, because Ted hasn't, like the modern day Ted would have. The Ted that died during the whole checkmate bit, where Max Lord shot him, that Ted would get along with this Booster, and they would be connected in that way, because that Ted had matured as well. He had a lot going on in the storyline. This is going way back to their JLI days, and this is not the same Booster from then. And I liked the distinction, because, this whole, when he took on this role as this hero that nobody, the greatest hero that nobody knows about, that kind of bit, I love that maturing and making of that decision is something that would have affected him. And I think the character at the end who has those personal moments with the little girl is a guy who is a lot more mature and is more of a father figure and can be in that role, or brother, or whatever role he's going to be in. It looks like a father figure.
Oh, he's going to be the father figure. And it's, I'm wondering who she's going to be, where that's going to go with her, how much we're going to see on her growth and her development and her maturity, and where is her story going to go? Because that's the one that it's again another new character, kind of interesting, wondering what's going to happen there. There's so many different ways that this story can go, this character can go, that it whenever I read a story, I do stop and think, about moments in time. What would I do if I could go back in time? Would I go back and kill Hitler? Would I go back and, alert people, about some disaster? Or would I go back and hang out with old friends that are now dead? Or, would I, what would you do? Would you abuse this power? Would you, just continue on?
Look how many mistakes he made along the way. How many things he had to correct along the way because of what happened. In this arc, he had to jump back and forth through time multiple times. He had to jump forward in time to ask Ted what happened when he was the chipmunk in her throat. I loved that bit because he's like, all right, enough. I've had enough of this already. Ted, how did you get out of it? And I thought that was a cool use of time travel. Yeah. And don't tell me that you saw me. Just cool bits. And it was something that was Barda with Mr. Miracle.
Yeah.
In those moments where he had to say, we're going to be... The bit where he had to say, look, I know how you feel about me right now, but let's be honest. We are friends. And, in the future... you're going to look back on this, and we're going to, say we're friends in the future. I love when she punched him into the wall. Then he goes, oh, now I know why she did that. But great moments between them where it's like he was appealing to the fact that you may not respect me much now, but there is going to be a point in time in your life where you look back on this, and we're going to have grown, and our friendship's going to have grown, and we are friends, and that's why you would do this. That's why you'd give me the boom tomb technology to take care of this and make this happen and make this work. The way that he appealed to her, I thought, was great. Again, showing maturity. The booster from the past would not have been able to appeal to her in the same way. And that's how she knew he was from the future. I love the whole thinning hair bit and stuff like that, which was great. But not even that. She knew, not just from that, but from the way he was carrying himself and the way he was acting, that there was something different there. That was a strength of this series as it's progressed. And something that I think has... I think Giffen and DeMatteis, as they've taken over, have gradually eased themselves into. Yeah. As far as showing more and more of this growth of the character. It's something that their run has shown. So I've really liked that about the character, and I really wanted to make sure we shouted out Booster Gold, because it's another example of a book that's been fun and enjoyable along the way. Flash just ended its last arc. And we've got this one-shot issue right now. It's Flash number 7. Jeff Johns, Scott Collins on art for the fill-in. I'm a fan of fill-ins where they do stuff like this, where it's like, okay, we need to give the art team a little bit of a break, but we need the book to continue on, to be on time. And a focused issue on Digger Harkness, where we get to see his childhood and what led him to be who he is now, and what puts him in a vulnerable place where he's going to be asking the kind of questions of the Reverse Flash that he's asking in this issue. Very important Brightest Day tie-in for him, as far as to get an idea of, he doesn't know why he has to do the things that he does. Why does he have to throw the boomerang at Dawn Granger, Dove? What does this all mean, and what does his future look like? Imagine that there was a foe who was a hated foe of you and your friends, and you had to make a bargain with this devil in order to find out that information. The power behind that choice right there, knowing that you could give up the friendship. This could put him in dire straits with the Rogues. And
he was on the outs with the Rogues anyways. He wasn't back with the Rogues. They figured, hey, they were leaving him in that prison to rot, saying, hey, you're on your own. You got to figure this out for yourself, just because of everything that happened through Blackest Night, with the innocent people being killed, the breaking of the code, no women, no children, and they were going at, and what Captain Boomerang Jr. did, feeding his the dead version of him, what they were doing there. So it was a really cool kind of moment where he's sitting there saying, I'm on the outs with these guys. I need the Rogues, and it's not even he couldn't handle himself by himself. He can, but there's something about having the Rogues having your back. And it was all about, that there is a level of villainy, within being in a Rogue. If you're in the Rogues, if you are one of them, there is that code that they have. And he wanted to get that code back. It makes sense that he would want to have that, that comfort, that family, that, that feeling of protection, that he got from being a Rogue. And he's risking it all. Yeah. I thought that was a cool moment, because for me, again, lot of ignorance on Flash and Flash's rogues. I didn't realize what level of hatred there was towards the Reverse Flash. I didn't know about the big, huge Rogue versus Reverse Flash war.
Both sides.
Yeah, and I didn't know any of that, so I'm going into this going, really? Oh, cool. And then as they're explaining his past, you're seeing this, and it was just even throughout the whole thing, I thought that was just a cool way to let me know as a very light Flash reader, what the pack history is, where this comes from. So going forward, when we see the ramifications of this issue, I have a definite more comfort level with who the rogues are.
The important thing about the Flash universe to me has always been it's not just about the development of the Flash. It is getting to know his villains. It is getting to know his supporting cast. The best writers of the Flash, and Jeff Johns certainly falls into this category, when Wally was the Flash, knew that and pulled that in. This issue to me made me feel at home with this book because it isn't all just about Barry. It's about Barry's world. It's about the Flash world.
Yeah.
And, it's something, why am I excited for the book Speed Force when it's going to come out? Well, because it's just going to give us more of a larger view into the Flash universe and the characters that we're not seeing on screen right now. So I'm really enjoying that aspect of this world. The idea that, as we look in Digger's past, we're finding out more about his dad. And his real dad as well. Did you tell me you didn't see that coming from the beginning? That was so. When the boomerang came, like mysterious boomerang gift from somebody. Who's that's coming from? Gotta be from real dad.
Yeah, it's got to be the biological father, and the fact that and it's funny because this is like the second or third rogue that I'm learning their past from, and they all have very similar upbringings where they had a very abusive childhood where they didn't grow up in a loving household,
right.
And especially it was always the father who was very abusive, and just you kind of see, and if you think about it, just
what brings them together.
Yeah, what brings them together, what makes them bad guys, what puts them against the law, why they turn to life of crime, why they turn to being the bad guys. This type of upbringing isn't going to be the most conducive for developing a positive attitude on life. So you got these negative emotions where all he knows is pain, suffering,
and the occasional quick moment where there was a quick fix in your life that made some brightness.
Right.
So it is, and sometimes, and they're bred and raised to look for the quick fix, to look for the
that moment spark.
Right.
Bam.
Right, and that the feeling that they deserve it with what they've been through. That's something I dug that about this, and it was very cool.
Oh, definitely, and it's funny because at times I sit there and I do feel bad when I hear stories about people's upbringing and I see them turning to life of crime, and like in the real news, when I see this type of stuff, and especially in the comics, you start feeling bad for them, and you're like, oh, but then you start looking and well, they did make their choices. Yes, they had this rough life, and there are a lot of people who've had this rough life who've turned it around, who've they had that one part in their life where they said, okay, I'm not going to follow the same steps. I'm not going to be that bad person. I'm going to go on. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to become an honest person. I'm going to become an honest citizen, and and people can fight through this. Now they're at a disadvantage at an early age, so they're already under the bar, so to speak. But it's one of those things where part of me feels bad for these guys. Part of me as well, they're it's tough love, tough part of life, but I do get emotional conflicts going, and especially when they showed the funeral scene with the mom. When the dad just snapped it out, and finally confessed everything to him. He's like, and the one comment where he's like, he doesn't even remember grabbing and throwing the boomerang. It was just so natural to him, and he lops his dad's head off. Clean kill, boom. He is, Captain Boomerang. He is this rogue. He is this killer. And I love seeing just how he just, ching, oh well, nothing to it. He just killed somebody, didn't even really faze him that much because that's who his life is. He's like, and then he goes, then I remember he wasn't really even my father at all. So I was like, dang, that is just a nice, it was a nice, I don't want to say nice but it was just such a fitting for who this character was, and I love seeing that.
Another thing, I mentioned this on the show multiple times, colors by Brian Buccellato, and I know I probably butchered the last name, and I want to apologize for that, because I want to give a compliment here. One of the things I really like, this is the regular colorist on this book, Another great example, we've seen this before in other fill-ins on titles. If you're using the same colorist, they've got a thematic style to the book, and even though you've got Scott Collins on this book, it still feels like it's the same book that we've been reading for the previous 6 issues. It has that same kind of tone and mood and feel and atmosphere that's been set in there. And it just, really, really bang-up job on this, because those moments where Reverse Flash is hanging upside down, then this whole confrontation bit between the two of them. You want me to tell you about your future, Captain Boomerang? I may know everything there is to know about the Flash's lifeline, but what makes you think I could be bothered to know anything about yours? You're a rogue. You're a cockroach. You're nothing. The mark you make on history is non-existent. By the 25th century, Captain Boomerang is as forgotten as today's weather. When all is said and done, you don't matter. How does that feel? Expected. Hell, I ain't dreaming about a Captain Boomerang museum or some rot. I ain't like you wishing I was important like the Flash, delusional jobber like you don't see that. 'Cause you don't know anything about me. So it's interesting how he's taking a look at it. And then this whole idea of karma. Because you've released me now. Karma because of things you've done. But now there's some karma that's going to be coming back your way because you released me at that moment.
Yeah.
And it's going to be karma with the rogues. But is it going to be more than that? Is it beyond just the rogues? Is there going to be some other karma that comes out of this pivotal event? Who knows? This is an interesting turn of events. Did he get the answers he was looking for? Yes and no. It didn't really give him any answers as far as throwing the boomerang at Dawn Granger, and what his overall role is going to be and if he's going to survive all this. But it did let him know that I just made a huge mistake. It's in this one, it's almost like I want to smack him in the head and go, you should have seen this coming. I would not release my worst enemy to know something. But the need to know overtakes you.
And see, I don't know if if in his place, the need to know overtakes you, and I understand that, but there's still just some things where you don't go to a villain for help because they're always going to double cross you. With him, I was sitting there the whole time reading this, going, dude, what are you doing? He's going to double cross you. He's not going to help you. He's not going to give you the insight you need, and that's part of the thing where the insight to this is personal for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's a tough thing. It was a really cool issue, and I was glad to see it. And it was funny because Flash isn't in this issue at all, except for the one panel where they show, him, the young Captain Boomerang fighting him. But it still felt like a Flash book. It still felt like you still felt his presence there. You still understood why it was there. It wasn't, this wasn't a throwaway issue. It was a really cool thing. I'm
going to go on a limb and say it's one of the better issues.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah.
It was a great read.
It was a great read. It was a wonderful read, and it was something that.
And you don't have to agree with me. For me, it was one of the better issues because I love the rogues.
Yeah,
and I love seeing how the rogues feel about the whole world. And those personal pieces. To me, I think when you know villains, when you really know them, there's something more compelling about when they go up against the hero because you understand their motivations, where they're coming from, what's driving them. And I think this has always been a strength of the Flash world, is that these characters are extremely well developed. Yeah. And it worked here.
And next issue is Reverse Flash. Looks like they're going to do a similar thing with Reverse Flash.
Secret Origin.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find out more about what's driving their feud.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Nice work, Atom. What are these characters up to?
I actually want to shout out friends of the show, Comic Book Roadshow. They recently did an interview on their podcast with Brian Q. Miller. And we've got links right on RagingBullets.com to Comic Book Roadshow, but click on that and listen to it because they've got a really cool episode up there that I really enjoyed listening to, so I want to give it a quick shout. But the reason why it's important right now is we're going to talk about Batgirl number 16. And this is a book that, ever since its launch, I talked about it before we were talking about Superboy. Fun book. And, I'm loving that there's more books that I'm feeling that way with now, where it's, got this fun factor to it. Stephanie Brown as Batgirl is just a great character. Adventure. Yes. That's what superhero stories are supposed to be. I'm digging this so much.
We talked about with the fun aspect that Superboy was having. I mean, even during that conversation, we did throw Batgirl into the conversation. Stephanie is a character that I'm so glad that, one, she got brought back from the dead. 2, that she's been put into the Batgirl costume. And 3, that they're letting the character grow. They're letting the character develop. She is becoming her own version of the hero. She's taking it her own way. It's funny if, back when I was, a kid, I never would have read Batgirl. I never would have read Supergirl. Just because of, when I was a young kid, I wouldn't look at the female hero and go, oh, I want to read this, and I wouldn't admit how much I'm enjoying it, even, if I did read it. Just because I was, a stupid kid. And, nowadays, when I look at titles like Batgirl, Supergirl, I do question whether, how much am I going to enjoy this, because, you think about it, if it's about a young girl, she's 18, 19 years old, female in college who's this superhero, how much can I relate to her? Like with Tim.
Do you do that with a Blue Beetle, though?
Well, here's the thing. It's the whole deal with the male stuff. It's the male-female stuff. Like with a young male...
So the age difference, you can't... With a young male, you can relate to it because you were there once before. But a young girl, you're questioning, how can I relate to this because I haven't been there before? Am I getting you right?
Exactly. Okay. And that was always the hesitation that I would have like nowadays. But to be honest, I'm not having any of those type of issues. I'm really enjoying this character. I understand...
You connect with young girls in a way that you never did before? I'm sorry.
I hate you. I really do.
You think you should have some of those issues again?
I was going to just say that my comment was going to be a flattering towards Brian Q. Miller in that he could explain it in a way.
Makes it accessible. I'm totally teasing you. That's one of the things I love about this book is it's an accessible book. And whether you're a boy or a girl, male or female, adult or not, you can relate to some of the trials and tribulations she's gone through at that age because we have all been there. And it is not a male or female thing. It's a fact that we can relate to the fact that there's an insecurity you go through when you're younger, but then there's also this sense of wonder at the world and seeing it a different way. I love her internal dialogue when she's crashing through ceilings and stuff like that going, oh, this is a bad idea. And wait, but her whole concern is, and we've all been here in our lives before. We're still here as adults. I hope nobody sees me. Because my credibility then is out the window.
How many times have you been walking down an icy sidewalk, you hit a patch, you hit the ground, first thing you do is you look around, okay, who saw me?
That's exactly right, and she has those moments all the time. And you're right, I love that about the character because I connect with her in a way that I never expected that I would. Mm-hmm. She's a fantastic, taking all joking out of it, it really is a character that's very well written and very accessible. I love the new Batgirl. This is a fun series. She's a great character to follow, yet at the same time, she's a real superhero. She has some real heroic moments, comes up with some clever and creative ways, not just to survive situations, but to resolve situations. And she has this great team going. I love the detective that she's working with, and I love how there's like a little crush thing. I don't know what's going on with them.
There's a little infatuation. Yeah, there's a little tension
but it's two-sided as well, too, because he does a little flirt thing with her. So it shows that she's matured as a character as well. She's older now, and these are relationships that are going to happen. Oracle shaking her head to the whole thing like mom, and that's just which fits the Oracle role. And Brian Q. Miller's clearly paying attention to how Oracle's being written all over the DC universe because he's bringing a lot of that into this book, and I really appreciate that.
And even when we don't have Oracle and we have Proxy with Wendy, I thought that was a great addition to this cast. For a while there, I thought it was going to be Proxy was going to be the main, support piece and not Oracle. And Oracle would be Birds of Prey, Proxy would be in Batgirl. And I was okay with that because I was like, okay, yeah, give a chance to flesh out.
It may still be that way.
Yeah, but it's like you got a chance to flesh out this character, but it still feels like it's part of the same universe. And that was something that I really enjoyed seeing, just, Batgirl's development of her own supporting cast. You got your detective, you got your, you got Proxy. You got her interactions back and forth with her mom, the occasional college student stuff where she's trying to deal with, classmates and or, people in her that are in her study group and whatnot. So there's all these different factions of Stephanie's life being brought into Batgirl's life, the difficulties of the superhero lifestyle. You got to sometimes disappear at a moment's notice and come up with some excuse to throw off people, not so they don't think you're doing this. And I think that is just a great way. We've seen her do the bob and weave kind of stuff when dealing with her classwork, when dealing with her mom, when just that other side of it, of the life, that the non-glorified, the tough part of being a superhero is dealing with people outside of the business, people who aren't going to know that you can say, hey, I got a 2319. Okay, 2319, go. No, you got to come up with a reason and an excuse to get out of the room. And I thought that is just a kind of a cool, aspect also that we're seeing in this. It's the Stephanie Brown character, not just Batgirl character. You have to have more behind than just the comic book, just the superhero. You need the person.
Being accused of murder in your costumed identity affects your civilian identity. When you're at Gotham U and you see people berating this, and you got to question. I love the fact that it questions her confidence. How effective am I being here? And she and Oracle at the end of the book have a great conversation about this, about how it's not about the pat on the back. It's not about us being clear, your name being cleared. It's about this boy that died and justice for him. And that distinction was very interesting that Oracle put there, saying, why we're doing this is because it's the right thing to do. And it's not about us, it's about them. And it's about what effect we can have on the world. And, there's moments where she's civilian identity trying to say, hey, Batgirl didn't do this. And the frustration that's got to be looking at, how much can I defend it? Because if I go too far, I'm going to obviously give myself away here. I loved those moments.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
With Proxy, Wendy,
Mm-hmm.
The scenes we see in her in a couple of times, I really liked, just her interaction and her doing her part. But those scenes where she's talking to Marvin, now, is she actually talking to him, or is it just her thing in her head kind of dealing with the loss of her brother? Because we've seen freaky stuff happen in comic book universe.
Do I think she's nuts? No.
Well, I'm not saying nuts. I'm thinking, is there a possibility that Marvin is actually there?
I didn't take it that way. I wouldn't have any real issue if there was, but I don't see anything to indicate that. I see that as she was so used to for so many years the two of them being teamed up,
bouncing
like a Teen
ideas
Titans
off each other.
bouncing idea, that she's doing that out loud, and like you'd talk to any dead family member or something like that, as kind of for a comfort. Kind of your brainstorming thing, bouncing ideas. Your terminology of bouncing ideas off.
The way they catch the villains with the cameras on the campus, that was Marvin's idea. That wasn't her idea, because she's like, yeah, Marvin, that's a great idea. It wasn't like, hey, what do you think of this? In her head, Marvin came up with the idea that, hey, because the security guard points to the camera. Hey, you see that camera up there? That's how I know you were here. She's like, did those cameras run across all the campus? Yeah, Marvin, that's a great idea.
I think she's having a conversation in her head, though.
The
way somebody would brainstorm. I think your brainstorming idea is totally what it is. I don't think Marvin's actually talking to her other than in her head.
Would you have an issue if they did that? Because you think about it, they had the whole,
I don't see it being necessary.
The anti-life equation was involved with everything going on, and we've seen Calculator do multiple stuff with Kid Eternity, kind of like pulling on the soul, pulling the soul back into Kid Eternity. So who knows? Could there have been a chance where a piece of Marvin came back?
If there's a storytelling reason why it would be important, yes. I guess, and I mean that would be the key to me. Like why do we need to do this? I guess I don't see the reason why.
Yeah, I don't know or care either way.
The way that it works,
wondering.
the way that it's working on the page here works totally for me. I totally get what she's doing. That's her way of kind of talking in her head about it. If there was, I'm sure if what you're saying is something that's a possibility, the only reason why it would be there that Brian K. Miller was like, well, I've got a really cool idea on what to do with this, and that would be there. I guess I don't see why.
You don't see a need for it.
Yeah, I don't see how. I don't see how it helps the Batgirl story. That's me, though. Yeah. But I could be wrong. I got a lot of faith in this writer and what he's doing with Batgirl. So
who knows
if that was something he was going to do, okay, hey, let me see what you're doing with it. But I guess I don't see it at all. I see literally what's happening on the page is exactly what's going on. Mm-hmm. That's me, though.
Yeah,
so,
now, if you're Oracle, are you going to be worried about that?
No. I think I'd be more worried if she wasn't addressing him. I guess in the sense that, her conversation with him, that's a way of coping, dealing with, moving forward. I think if she really thought Marvin was there, mm-hmm. which, are you taking that she really feels Marvin's there?
No. I
guess from some of your, because I don't. I guess I didn't take it as all as she was really talking to Marvin. I took it as just kind of a.
Yeah, let me clarify.
The way people, we all talk to ourselves to a certain extent, so I took it as that.
Exactly, and that's exactly how. And just so 100% people clarify where I'm at, I really see that as her just talking to herself, but instead of saying, "Hey, what should I do?" she's saying, "Hey, Marv, what do you think about this?"
Because it's a comfort.
It's that comfort. It's, as I said, it's the bouncing ideas. It's just that whole kind of brainstorming type of deal. So I don't think she's sitting there and she sees him or she hears his
now,
voice.
Now, if we're in a room together and she and I are having a conversation, she all of a sudden starts ignoring me and talks to Marvin.
Then you got an issue. Then you got an issue.
Yeah. Okay, Sybil. But no, I didn't take it that way.
Okay, okay, so we're on the same page. I'm just wondering, this kind of, that was something that got me thinking, or is this a path they're going to go? And that's something I like about the story as well, and the writing, that as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking future issues, what's going to happen, because we know the story with these Reapers aren't done yet. There's still going to be the next generation of them coming after her. There's still more in this story to come, so it's definitely, again...
Well, there's a Speedster Reaper.
Right.
Which is... and I don't know if that's Blink is going to be what the name of the Speedster... because it says Blink and you'll miss her. I don't know. The Speedster Reaper looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a cool costume.
So I don't know. I'm curious about the whole thing and to see where it goes. This is a book that month in, month out is just fun for me. I love her costume. I love that her fighting style's improved. I like that we've seen that through interactions with other heroes as well, that they've acknowledged the fact that her fighting and the way that she does combat's improved.
Well, we talked about it when we're talking about with Bruce when he was the imposter.
Oh, sure.
How he...
And Red Robin noticed it as well.
And Red Robin, They acknowledge that she's developing her own fighting style. She's developing her own, Stephanie Brown Batgirl fighting style. And I think that is a nice... it's a cool way, again, for evolution and development of the character.
Cool. Jim, Jonah Hex number 62 is a book that I wanted to talk about. First of all, because what's interesting is you made a change in how you approach Jonah Hex, which I was hoping would happen at some point. Not because I'm trying to get you to buy books senselessly. It's really, I don't know, in all honesty, this is a book I have loved since issue 1 all the way through. I think it's a great read. I think I know you well enough to know the types of books that you would enjoy. And I felt this was one. I'm like, Jim just... for whatever reason, hasn't clicked with this book the way that I have, but I do think when he hits the right issue or something like that, he's going to get it, and it's going to be one of those books where it's going to be like, what have I been missing all along? You're collecting Jonah Hex differently now. What led to this?
Okay, and my whole association and lack of association with Jonah Hex wasn't about clicking with the character or enjoying the character. It was... truly was a financial thing. I had so many titles that I was getting, and there was just so much time drawn on me, and I wasn't running. I was finding that I was stockpiling multiple issues, and I was like, you know what? I can't do this. So I dropped it. I was like, I'm going to go to trade and just go that way and leave it alone. And it was never about quality. It was never about the enjoyment of the reading. It literally was a pure one of those financial limitations. And then when DC made the announcement for $2.99 for the titles, I started looking at my budget, and I realized, you know what? I can afford to add another title. And the very first title that I added back into the list was Jonah Hex floppies. Now I had a run of, Jonah Hex, I had a gap, and then I was picking up starting at number 62.
Right.
Now, when the announcement was made, New York, I made the first order.
Can I say something before you continue?
Okay.
I want to keep in mind again that you did this out of financial consideration, which is there's a certain irony to what you're about to say, because I know where you're going with this. Go ahead.
Okay. So I have this, this pretty good sized gap between where I left off and where I went, in 62. So I was like, I'm just probably, and I'm telling myself this, I'm just gonna, just take 62 on and go that way. I'm not gonna go and get the back issues because, again, financial reasons. Well, wouldn't you didn't know it, I missed a comic in my pre-order, and I didn't realize it until I'm sitting there and I had a blank. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll hop online because there's a couple of different stuff where you get the current weekly issues, and I clicked on it and I ordered the one comic that I'd missed, and for some stupid reason I go, hey, I wonder how many issues of Jonah Hex they have, and sure enough, that site had all but 4 of the issues that I was missing. And then I'm looking, going, hey, those are kind of discounted. I think, click. So I ordered those. So now I had a gap of 4 issues. So I went to another website, and I'm like, hey, look, there are the other 4. All right, click. Yeah. So I went back and I got...
Are you current in the reading of it, or are you just...
No, I'm not current in the reading of it.
That's the great thing about... And for anybody listening, the great thing about Jonah Hex is you could literally start with issue 62 and read the series. You don't need to know anything else. This issue is completely self-contained.
Yeah, I jumped in. Literally, I have not read anything, really before this. I've read a couple of the really big story arcs that you said, hey, you got to read this, and I got the trade of it, so I could read it.
Yeah.
I do have, I jumped right on, literally on 62, read it, and then once again, I was sitting there laughing, going, man, why did I drop this? I should have dropped something else. And again, I love Westerns. Jonah Hex character has that kind of, that code to him. It's Graham Palmiotti, so it's a really cool story being told. Visually, it looks awesome. It's just something that I should have been collecting Jonah Hex. I should have dropped something else.
Well, I worried about this book numbers-wise, because I don't want this book to be canceled. So it's really taking the joking out of it. One of the reasons why I've always, pimped this book on the show is said, hey, you got to read this title. Talking to you, I'm not just talking to you, to our listening audience. I just think it's an amazing book. And it's another one of those fun reads where every month I pick up an issue of Jonah Hex. There's something in there that makes me want to high-five somebody, you in particular. I'm like, please read this so we can talk about it more, because, I dig this book a lot, and this Carnival issue is just a great example of what I'm digging about it. Jonah's on this mission with, and it looks like bad guys right from the get-go, where they're trying to find this box or this item to take back to the Carnival, and you find out that along the way that this item is being stolen, and nobody's what they seem, including the benefactor that's hired Hex to begin with, she, the bearded lady from the Carnival. And there was just an interesting bit in what was going on here, how it was really about turning on the Carnival people and turning their own profit. What happens when the bearded lady decides to set off on her own and stick it to the Carnival folk? Yeah. And I love the whole idea of Carnival justice and how Jonah Hex has to sit there and make a decision. I'm bringing this person back. I'm bringing back what I was commissioned to bring back to the Carnival. I'm going to let them decide how they want to deal with it. I just want to get paid.
Yeah, and it's all Jonah wants. It's his code, because he is the good guy in this.
But there's a gray area with him in the sense that he is a businessman. So the bounties that he goes to collect, it's like, I'm not going to get personally connected to this. This is an event where, right now, this is about me delivering the goods. My reputation's important here. I am a bounty hunter. If somebody hires me, they need to know that I am going to deliver what I said I was going to deliver. So he is doing this with this creature, this octopus-like creature that was supposed to be delivered to the Carnival. Well, this interesting bit when he shows up at the Carnival, and this whole Carnival justice bit where the bearded lady is being beat up by the strongman, and it's clear that this was going to go on for hours and hours, maybe even days.
Yeah, it was going to take a while for her to die.
Right. And Jonah pulls out a gun and shoots right square in the head the bearded lady and says, this just ain't civilized. Yeah. I love that about him. There is a code to this guy. Like, he's been paid at this point. He's done his bit. They invite him to watch Carnival Justice, and, just as, an observer. And I love that bit where that's something I always like about Jonah, that he has a code across the board. He has a code as a bounty hunter where it's about delivering on the mission. But cruelty and viciousness, for the sake of it, is not something he'll abide by, because it's just not right. It's just not civilized. And he is a man with a code. It's a gray area, though. Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns are always what I go to with this, where he plays that character, the man with no name, and you're never quite sure how how on the lawful side he really is. He's got that gray area, but this totally works here in this book.
Yeah. And it was funny because with the bearded lady, when the second read through and that who, I noticed the more feminine features of her face.
Did you?
The first time I didn't notice it. I was like, oh, okay, I didn't even think twice of it. But knowing that was a female, I one specifically looked for it, and you definitely do see feminine features underneath the beard and on the face. And I thought that was just a cool moment. But just even that little scene when he's eating after he dropped off the bearded lady, after he's sitting in that that restaurant eating, and the maitre d's like, hey, can I take your hat and coat? He's like, bring me a steak, rare. Hat and jacket stay as is. And you have those other people kind of like, oh, what an uncivilized man. Be careful, it may hear you kind of deal. Where they're addressing Hex as if he's uncivilized.
Yeah.
And again, it was just that whole level of what is civility? What is, Hex a little rough around the edges? Yes. Is he uncivilized? I don't know. Because even he found that the carnival justice was just a level beyond what you should do. There is justice, there's vengeance, and then there's just being plain outright nasty. And, to beat somebody to death, one hand, I'm like, yeah, I can understand where, depending on what someone does. There's, someone does a horrible act against a child, I would have, I completely understand why those parents would want to beat that person to death very slowly. But someone steals from me, okay, dead is dead, fine. I wouldn't torture somebody over, the level of what she did. Yes, what she did was wrong. Yes, I believe in capital punishment, so I have no problem with her dying for her crimes. But
the carnival is family.
Right.
And that's, I love that there was this idea of what is carnival culture and what is that like. That was something that really worked for me. I'm totally agreeing with everything you're saying. I love seeing the distinction because I'm agreeing.
Yes,
this isn't me disputing you. It's just the opposite, saying, but then it's carnival justice, and you see on that end. That was the neat twist of the whole thing.
I do understand. Yeah,
It works so well in this issue, and I love it. And that's something that Hex has been consistent with. The writing obviously is Gray and Palmiotti on this one. The artist was Eduardo Riso, and I hope I'm not butchering that. It's the artist from 100 Bullets, which I really loved. And colorist is Rob Schwager, who has done the color work on majority of the issues of Jonah Hex. And I've loved that too because there's been again theme and tone that fits Jonah Hex, and it's just a great looking book all the way through. This is a series that's been 62 issues now, and it really, when I saw the number of the issue, and we were going to talk about this one, it dawned on me, I'm like, wow, this book has been around for 62 issues, and I want to see it around for 62 more, because I just think there's just an endless unlimited possibility for this series, and Gray and Palmiotti really get this character and what makes a good Western work in the DC universe. So I would encourage anybody, if you're looking for that book, especially now, you mentioned the $2.99 price point. This is the time where you can pick up a couple extra titles now. Those $3.99 books that dropped off, for those of you that lost $3.99 books, there's not room for another title. This is something a little different, and I like that in my reading list. This is one of those books easily in my top 5 as far as I've got to have a Jonah Hex in there because it's so not like anything else that I'm reading that it's important to me, and I'm thrilled that you're getting that vibe with it now and that you went back to singles. Well, only because here's my problem with trades for myself. I don't know if you run into the same problem. When I buy certain books and trades, the trades are the last thing I get to.
Yeah.
Because I'm reading so many singles that I just, at the end, it's like if I have a chance, I've got a stockpile of trades that every one of them I purchased, I want to read them. I'll start reading some of them over the summer, but there's going to be ones, quite frankly, they're going to sit for years before I get to them because of that. So when I hear somebody, like when I hear you say that, now there's people who deliberately collect the trades and they read the trades as they come out, and that's completely different than what I'm talking about. When I wait for the trade for something, a lot of times what ends up happening, unfortunately, is that gets pushed to the back burner.
Yeah.
And I avoid that. And I knew that was happening. I'm sure that was happening with you with Jonah Hex.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And and I'm like, Jim's missing out on just a great read monthly that he needs. So I'm thrilled that you're getting this book again and that you're getting the enjoyment because because I said to you on the phone, I'm like, do you want to talk Hex? And you're like, the Carney issue? Oh yeah. And I can hear from your voice. I'm like, oh yeah, we definitely need to have this talk. Let's talk about Batman and Robin number 17. We're doing a series where we're going to take a look at each one of the Bat books that feature Book and Dick. Yeah, no, feature Bruce and Dick Grayson to decide which ones are our favorites. And this is the first Batman Incorporated issue of this series. First one that Grant Morrison's not writing. This one, it was surprising for me because this one's written by Paul Cornell, which I was expecting Pete Tomasi and Patrick Gleason and Scott McDaniel on the artwork. So we're going to have to revisit this book in 3 issues when they take over. But I thought it was interesting to talk about this one because out of the starting gate, real interesting series, because you get right from the get-go, this series, what's always worked for me about Batman and Robin has been the adventure aspect of it. And I know I've used adventure a lot on this episode, but I really, my superhero comics, what drew me to them? Adventure.
Yeah.
Fun, excitement. I want to be a hero. I want to be involved in this whole world. This is another one of those books that's getting that.
Yep.
And I'm just having a really, really good time with this one. The two of them, they go bursting through the door. What are we missing? Is it us? Stop the wedding. And it's just such a great moment where the two of them get into the fight with this witty banter, but it shows now after 17 issues the familiarity between Dick Grayson and Damian as a team, as a partnership, just works. This is what Batman and Robin has been about since my childhood, and this totally gets it. Role reversal between the two characters as far as thematically, who's darker, who's grimmer, just doesn't matter. This is Batman and Robin, and what an appropriate title for this book, and Paul Cornell gets it.
Yeah, and I love just this opening banter that they both, throughout the "Is it us?" Stop the wedding, and Damian's like, "All right, we both did it, but we should try not to." What? We both had a line. Well, I've always wanted to stop a wedding. I'm saying what we do isn't meant to be fun. And I thought that was just a cool play out as this action. This is
speaking almost like Dad.
Yeah.
Because when Bruce was analyzing them as the insider, he made that point. I don't know, he wasn't comfortable with the fact that they almost seem like they're having fun, and that Dick Grayson seems like he's having fun in the role. I love that Dick Grayson's bringing that to the role.
Yeah, and Damian kind of even calls him out about it because, when Bruce wasn't around, he really didn't have that. There was those moments where he was, being a little bit lighter, a little bit funnier, but he wasn't really completely doing it as much as he's doing here. And Damian's like, hey, since he's come back, you've started a little bit more Nightwing-ish on Batman. And I thought that was a cool fact that that Damian's looking at him that way. They're both looking at it. And, is Dick, doing something a little bit different now that he doesn't have to be, the Batman
Bruce.
before?
He doesn't have to be Bruce.
Yeah.
I like that, actually. I find that refreshing because I love his Batman right now.
Yes, I completely, I remember I was the guy in the camp that said I didn't need Bruce to come back. I was happy with Dick Grayson as Batman, and I was happy with Damian as Robin. Once I got past, once the character grew, he developed a little bit. I got used to the attitude. I got used to the false bravado in a way.
Yeah.
Because once I started understanding who Damian is, I'm like, okay, I like this character. I like this dynamic between these two, and I like the fact that Dick has done some great stuff with Damian and made him a hero. He's brought the hero in Damian out.
I like that they're the yin and the yang. It's even more apparent now. Mm-hmm. Where they each bring something to the partnership. And it's funny how Damian's almost being Dad. I mentioned that earlier. I like that aspect of it where he's bringing the Bruce to the role.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun to see Robin in that role. Una Nemo being brought in. It's funny how pretty much so if you're an ex-girlfriend of Bruce Wayne who has not been seen on camera because you were one of the private girlfriends, you're going to wind up either you're starting off dead or you're winding up dead. Una Nemo is no exception to the rule. Well, sort of. We'll have to talk about what happens to her.
I kind of laughed, being a girlfriend of Bruce Wayne or being a friend of Tim Drake is not the safest thing to be in Gotham.
I love Tim Drake. I'd love to hang with him, but no, you realize it's not going to be a happy one.
Yeah. It's like joining the Thunder Agents. Not exactly the best
you're right.
Idea.
Arguably, I might join the Thunder Agents first, because at least then you have superpowers for part of it. Which, how fun is that? But there's an interesting little dilemma going on right now where as they're investigating this Una Nemo, we find out about this whole little bit where they're investigating chemicals and the fact that her body was returned, missing a finger. Then the finger came back. And when the finger came back, it was missing a nail. And all of these things were clues leading towards this end result of the body exploding due to the nail polish.
Yeah.
which there was this interesting little thing that was going on here. And what was missing becomes a theme in this whole thing. Like, what was missing when they went to the church? Well, what was missing first was the groom. Then what was missing second was the bride. And the bride turns out to be this Una Nemo, and with the hole in her head. Now, what is going on with her there? How is she still alive?
Yeah,
that's quite a piercing.
Yeah, that's a tough one to kind of rebound from, because that's center mass right in the head, right where the brain is. So it's once again it's a comic book universe. So we believe Kryptonians can fly, and Amazons and the Green Lantern rings. We believe all this. So there is a level of leeway when given with logic.
She can sleep standing up. Just put a peg in the wall.
And the fact that I looked at you and went, huh? And I set you up for the second half.
You have guests over. You can take my bed. I just like to stand.
Ooh, I wonder, big windy day.
It's good for posture.
I wonder on a big windy day if you get that kind of sound, a whistle.
Shh. So you're in a theater. Shh.
Can't help it.
Sorry, I forgot the hat. Can't take her anywhere. Una Nemo. But it's interesting. What are the chemicals? What's doing this? What experiment? Obviously, it's an experimentation that led to this. What is the experiment? Well, and there's this cult-like thing going on there too, which is interesting.
Yeah, experiment, magic. Who knows what's keeping her around? And again, it's we get some really cool art. Speaking of artwork, I really do love Tony McDaniel's art, and I think it's just
Scott McDaniels.
What did I say?
Tony McDaniel.
Sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. I like Tony McDaniel's art too.
Yeah, I like his art too.
Yeah.
This is the wrong guy. Oh God.
It's Scott McDaniel and Rob Hunter on inks.
Yes.
And Alex Sinclair on colors. So it's a pretty high profile team.
But.
No, I know you got caught up in the moment. Go ahead.
I got caught up in the moment, but going through the action sequences and just the way they play out. We talk about just how there's some fun moments going on, but you do get these fun dialogues in with that action sequences, in with the bam, bam, bam kind of rapid fire movement. You had it where you went back a little bit in time, then you're going back to the fort, back to the church where they're finishing up the fighting. They're in the upper rafters and they realize, okay, dump this guy. Let's move on to the second round kind of deal. And I love just this layout, and again, beautiful color work. Especially because a lot of times I worry in my head with a Batman title because you got the whole Batman persona. You got to have more shadows. It's going to be darker. Not with Dick and Damian. This book has usually been a very bright, very colorful book, and it reflects on who Dick Grayson is and how he's handling Batman. These are you go through these scenes. You got some really cool bright purples, some bright reds, some a heavy like a red, yellow, orangish color. As they're up in the rafters looking down, there are some shadow and some elements of that side of it, because you do need that in a Bat story, but they're not getting rid of the full color spectrum. They're keeping it colorful, they're keeping it light. It's that tone setting type of deal. And I'm so glad that this tone that's being set is that higher energy, that lighter, that funner.
What? I'm gonna just let's go. The unfolding mystery is something I like as well. I love that we've got this sense of action and adventure, but then we've also got this mystery that clue by clue we're following along with them. They don't quite know what's going on yet, and we're discovering it with them. I like feeling like we're the Batman and Robin running buddies right now. Like we're sitting there in the rafters with them. That's always cool to me, and that was brilliantly done in this issue. I love the moments in the Bat bunker with Alfred, where they were both so protective of Bruce. They didn't, what was it? Damian said that I was waiting for Dick Grayson to tell him. And Dick was like, well, I didn't want to tell him because it would happen when he was gone, yet he would still feel responsible. They're all protective Alfred and Dick especially, of the fact that Bruce has come back, he's happier, he's in a much better place. He's actually that person who might start a relationship again. We actually see echoes of this in things like Batman Inc., where we see the possibility, what's going on with him and Selina?
Yeah.
But is it or is there going to be somebody else? It's a Bruce that I'm really liking following right now, and I love that we see echoes of that in this book. You don't have to be reading Batman Inc. to understand where they're coming from, but yet if you are, as a fan of the whole thing, these are interconnected. That's what I love about thematic connections. You don't have to be reading any. If you're only reading 2 Batman books, great complete story. You get the fact that they're protecting Bruce. Cool. We can move along. Everything's great. Mm-hmm. Yet there's something more for the fans that are reading all of them as well. Good book. Nice kickoff to this series for Paul Cornell. Oh, I'm having a lot of trouble as I'm looking through these books because I'm enjoying them all for different reasons.
Picking a favorite is tough.
This is not what Scott Snyder and crew are doing over on Detective Comics,
right?
Which I'm loving. This is not what Tony Daniel, which is where you got your Tony. Where you got your Tony McDaniel from. Yeah. I totally get it now. I'm like, okay, here's where it's coming from. What he's doing over in Batman, very different. 3 different Dick Grayson books, 3 very different feels, yet it feels like the same character. I'm really digging this. Is there another Dick Grayson book? I don't think there is out of the batch. I think we've covered all 3.
We've covered all 3.
Do you have a favorite? Have you thought that far? Do we need to wait, or are you in that place where you can name your favorite?
Not yet.
Okay, we'll have to talk about that. Well, maybe let's get through the. Do we want to wait till we get through the Bruce books and then have that discussion?
Well,
or can you work it through?
It's a tough one. It really is, because on one hand, I think
I know mine.
Okay, you definitely are. See, here's my problem. I'm pretty sure I know mine, but there's another title that I'm like, I think as it fleshes out.
Do you want to wait then?
Well, let me explain it this way. Right now, Batman is my favorite. I have that strong, solid connection to it, and I feel like I like that title. I want that title,
which is consistent with what you liked before when we were doing Batman and Robin and Batman with Dick Grayson,
right?
And it seemed to be the Tony Daniel book was your preference there. Right. What is it about that book that
that's where I have the hard time explaining.
Is it the art? Is it the story? Is it a combination?
It is that meshing of the art and the story that I really, really enjoy. But with this Batman and Robin, I'm loving the look of it. So that's why I'm like, I have a hard time saying not Batman and Robin. But it's because I really do love seeing the interaction between Dick and Damian. And it's like it's hard for me to pick one out of the 2. And then now Detective Comics is sitting there. And before I was like, I could really easily say that, those 2 had a solid lead over Detective Comics. But I know as Detective Comics fleshes out, as things go down the line, as we see this long-term process that we know they have laid out, Detective Comics is going to probably has a very solid. It's going to jump up.
I'll just say it right now. It's Detective Comics for me.
Okay, yeah. See, and it's for me. I'm like, it's not there, but I know in my heart that it's going to be because I know there's this long-term plan for it. I know we're going to get something out of it. And I think part of the reason that I'm so solid on Batman is because when everything was first initially, it was Batman I was gravitating. It was a story in Batman. It was everything going on, and we've seen the build and the continuation of the story building, and that's the Dick Grayson, where it's more him by himself, more about him as Batman, him getting adjusted to the role, becoming who he is kind of deal, where I was like leaning towards. But the Batman and Robin have these great interactions between Dick and Damian that I'm like, oh God, this is such a great story, and I'm loving how this relationship is different. So it's so for me it is Batman.
Even though I'm saying it is Detective Comics for me, I'm with you in the sense that I agree. One of the joys of the Batman universe right now is every one of them that came out was a home run hit.
Yes.
And I think there's something for everybody, and I think if we had a third person here, they might have chosen Batman and Robin for that reason, because I agree with you, it was great. Let me put it this way. I'm in a position right now where if I had to drop a Batman title, it would really stink.
Yeah.
Because they're all good.
I know, and
I'm really not just saying that. I wouldn't mind saying, this is kind of the fluff one right now. Are we counting, for me, Shadow of the Bat right now, or not Shadow of the Bat, I'm sorry, boy, am I jumping way back. Streets of Gotham. Which actually, it's funny how I connect that title with Shadow of the Bat with where it is in its role. Batman Streets of Gotham. Are you taking that as a Bruce Wayne or a Dick Grayson title, or somewhere in the middle?
I'm thinking of it as somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
I'm thinking that Siren, Batgirl, Red Robin are the.
Are we not going to count Streets of Gotham then in this?
Well,
because I don't know that I count it as a. I don't count it as a Dick Grayson title.
I haven't been.
Yeah.
And when I think Dick, I think of
that's no insult to the book. I don't know where to put that one.
Yeah, I think of it as a supporting Bat Universe title. And it's one that I
guess it would count as our overall favorite Batman title.
Yeah.
Because it's a Batman title. I just don't know who I would... Because we wanted to evaluate the ones that were clearly Dick Grayson and the ones that are clearly Bruce Wayne. I don't know where to put that one.
Yeah.
And I like the Hush storyline that's going on there a great deal. I just don't know where to put it. And I don't feel comfortable putting it in the Dick Grayson books because I guess thematically it continues with this theme that, Hush has taken on the role of Bruce Wayne, but I don't know.
Yeah, see, I don't throw it in with the Dick Grayson category, and because I think there's very easily there's going to be Bruce Wayne stories out of that. I think it's just going to be kind of a.
Let's say we're going to take that out for sure in the running as far as our Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson ones, but then we can put it back in the running for our favorite out of the Batman books.
Bat Family books, right?
I'm not saying Bat Family. Batman books. I'm leaving out Gotham City Sirens and Batgirl and Red Robin because I don't think we're not evaluating those right now. As far as I think it'd be too hard to evaluate those. I want. What is my favorite Batman book at the end?
Yeah,
with Bruce, is it Bruce or Dick? Who won?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of interesting to me. Who won out of the two?
Yeah, and it's funny because as I talk and as I think, I do lean towards Batman and Robin as my favorite Dick Grayson book. So as I say, Batman, I do on back of my head.
Well, it'd be interesting to see if our overall favorite title isn't the same one we like with the character.
Yeah, see, it's I know it's a tough one. It's because you think about it. Back when Batman and Robin first came on the scene, I was like, no, Batman.
It's funny. The more we're talking about this, the more I'm like sitting. I feel the need to say Batman and Robin's very cool.
And in Batman and Robin... This is
a good problem.
Yeah, see, in Batman and Robin, you really get to see Dick Grayson... It's, as I said before, the Dick Grayson-Damian relationship. You get to see the difference between Dick and Bruce, with Dick and the cowl.
Right.
In the Batman title, you do see that, and you do see their interactions and the police dealings and just how Dick approaches cases and whatnot. But in Red Robin, I keep saying Red Robin. Batman and Robin, you really do see that solid difference between the two characters because you do see more of a Nightwing-esque style to the Batman in the Batman and Robins.
You are hitting so much on everything I love right now about the Bat books. Every one of them's different.
It's so hard to pick. It is so hard to pick just between the three Dick Grayson titles.
We talked way back when, and your concern was that there would be too many. Are you still feeling that way?
For me, no. And here's the thing I'm concerned about. I am concerned that people won't give all of the titles a try. And maybe it's financial reasons you can't afford.
Of course, and that's understandable.
You got, three, and how many? We got three Bruce Wayne?
Three Dick Grayson, and I guess, depending on where you count Streets of Gotham...
so you got
3 and 3, I guess.
3, 6, and then you got the supporting things. That's a lot of titles.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people who say, hey, I can't afford it. And I
worry about a Batgirl. I worry about an Azrael.
Oh, I definitely worry about Azrael.
I'm not as worried about Red Robin.
Red Robin, no. I
don't know
Red
why.
Robin, Tim's got a solid, loyal following. I think Sirens and Streets of Gotham are going to get hit hard. I do worry about titles like Batman and Robin, even though it's a great title. I think people will say, hey, if I want Dick Grayson, I'm going to go Batman, and then I'll go with,
I'm not worried about Batman and Robin.
I still am a little bit.
Here's the one thing. You figure it's been such a high-profile book. How many people now have 16 issues of it that are going to sit there and go, well, I'm going to dump it now? I don't know.
Yeah.
I've heard people say that they're going to do it, but it's a great book. Paul Cornell's doing a great job. Peter Tomasi coming on afterwards. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got two good writers right now delivering, and that's a good, really, really good story. Let me tell you why Detective Comics. Detective Comics, for me, it came from out of nowhere in the way that it presented itself. I have confidence in the creative team because I'm reading, American Vampire, Scott Snyder, cool, and this is, it's all going to work. Jock, David Barron, on paper that all works for me. That's cool. I knew I was going to enjoy the book. What I got I wanted to see on the big screen. I'm serious. There was a cinematic development to that whole thing. There are those moments. I talked about the moment in the window where you see Dick Grayson for the first time hovering in that window, and there's that lightning flash. It was style, and there was something about that where I just saw that book, and it was like I was drooling. It's like eye candy, and it just had a little bit of an edge over the other two books for me. So that's really what it was. It's not a knock on the quality of the other two. The other two I wouldn't drop in a million years. But that one, it was just like, whoa. Yeah. Out of nowhere. And the gadgets and the just every little bit that happened and all that. Having Commissioner Gordon in that lab and just that moment that was laid out there. There was just every page, there was something that I was going, oh my, the sunlight shining through the doggone window, and those moments with Alfred and Dick Grayson there, just everything worked so well.
And for me, it was all that stuff. Exactly what you're saying is the same. I had that same fire to it. And then when we were talking to David, he was just saying what's the plan? How there's this long-term thing. How they're looking, and it's not just going to be this little, and knowing that this stuff is going to be building, and knowing that more stuff is going to be down the line. Yeah. And that's another thing that just got me excited.
But I think they all have the build. So, I think that's going to be interesting. So I'm not going to take that away from the other two books. I really like them. The Bat books, to me, are A-list. Every one of these three that we just mentioned are A-list books.
Definitely.
Just the Detective for me was a little bit of an edge, and for you it was Batman.
Yeah, just a little. And it's funny because, if anybody were to give me an argument for any of the other titles, I wouldn't argue that.
This is why I wanted to do this.
I wouldn't
either. No, somebody could come on right now. That's why I said I'd love to have a third person here as Batman and Robin corner, because I think that would be a great...
Yeah.
I knew this would happen, though. And I think that's interesting for our listeners to go, they didn't wind up with the same book.
Yeah.
And I had a feeling we wouldn't. I'm going to be curious to see with Bruce.
Definitely.
Because we got the interesting one is the one that we haven't read yet. We're going to do it on Comic Timing, but obviously we're going to have to chat about it on our show to make the decision as far as between that and Batman Incorporated. Then actually take Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne books, because I'm having a tougher time deciding my overall favorite Batman book.
Yeah, that's
because I'll be able to decide my favorite Bruce Wayne. Obviously the Death Star that's waiting there right now is Batman Incorporated. I loved that issue. We talked about it already on the show last week. What more can I say about it? It's everything. I'm a Bruce junkie, and you give me an issue where you've got Bruce Wayne and Catwoman in another country having wild adventures, and there's a relationship going on. It's hitting every beat. The dark horse in that's going to be, what is David Finch going to throw at us?
Yeah.
And I'm anxious and open-minded to see that.
I'm excited to see that. And
I would love to have the problem be that David Finch all of a sudden hits me with a curveball, and I go, "Oh my gosh, Batman Incorporated's got to run." No, but this problem that we had with Dick Grayson that we were just talking about right now, what a great problem to have.
I know.
3 great books, and it's tough to decide between them.
Yeah.
As fans, we won. No, because you talk about the financial commitment. There's a financial commitment to comics. If I can keep saying, when I'm picking up Bat books, they were worth picking up. That's where, when is it too many? When one of the books doesn't deliver.
Yeah.
That's when it's too many.
When you ask the question, why am I getting this? That's when you start having issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that happens. I know why I'm getting
And I would encourage anybody who's having that problem, and you don't have to agree with everything we say. If you're having that problem somewhere in your collection, do yourself a favor, purge those titles, and find the ones that don't make you ask that question.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with everything we do on this show. We pick topics to chat about on this show, like a lot of the books we're going over on this episode are just books that Jim and I are like, we've been having fun with these. Let's talk about them. We're not going to get to everyone we want to chat about. That never happens on this podcast, which is why don't we waste time with ones that are just kind of, it's not delivering this month? Because there's too many good ones to chat about. Do yourself a favor and find those good ones where you're like, if I had to talk about them on a podcast, I wouldn't know which ones to talk about either. Because that's a great problem to have. And with Preview's catalog, too doggone big right now to have a collection where you're like, why am I picking this book up? If you've asked that question, I would say, if you've asked that question for more than an arc on a book, get off of the book.
Yeah.
You can always come back with a new creative team or something, but get off of that book. Good stuff.
We are Crystal Men from Mercury. We have no quarrel with you.
Jim, one of the books that I've been really digging month after month, and it's funny how much, I don't know where I would tie this into. I would say Green Lantern fans should be reading this. It's Rebels number 23. I would say if you're a Green Lantern fan, you haven't picked up this book, you already like the whole cosmic DC universe, you don't have to be reading Green Lantern to enjoy this. But thematically lately, there's been this whole political, with the Legion starting up with, Dox's Legion group setting up shop as being a police force that colonies can pay for to guard them, a security force, so to speak. They're competing directly with the Green Lantern Corps. And I love this idea. It's funny, Dox is doing a smear campaign on them to take away people's confidence in the Green Lantern so that they're more interested in signing up with him. Yeah. I get it. And it makes perfect sense. You could argue, are his motives questionable? Absolutely, 100%, but I get why. It's a business. And what he's doing makes perfect sense. But he's actually asking smart questions. Like, who decided that their law is the right way to go? Is their law right for your colony? If you hire our force, are we going to protect your independence and your right to keep your state the way that you legally see fit? But this has been such an interesting storyline because we have these two rookie lanterns who are involved in this storyline, and they have their own problems. Like the female lantern, she comes from a race of the, the Okarans, am I right? Or I forget what her race is. Yeah. But the race where she came from, it turns out, and she and Starfire have this moment in a previous issue, where they've got to confront her race. And she tells Starfire, I understand my race captured you and, basically, made you their slave. You need to understand, this happens to all the women in our race, and we are used as a breeding ground. We have no freedom. We fought for our freedoms. So your beef with me is not something we should have. And they have this wonderful moment where we get to see, I love Rebels because it's expanding the DC universe for me. It's introducing races and their political stance and their quirks. And there's moments on there where you see Dox. Dox had to make a decision there when he was confronted with Starfire. This is last issue I'm talking about, but it's such a pivotal moment where Dox clearly wanted to keep the contract, but recognized, if I keep this contract, I'm going to have this Tamaran girl tear me apart, or even worse yet, this is somebody who there's a benefit to me having her as a public figure. Having Starfire go around from colony to colony, she's respected. People look at her as a beacon of hope. Seeing her with Legion, this is great PR for me. This is a public face of Legion that I can't be, and people don't like me.
People, they don't like him. He needs to have that positive image.
Absolutely.
This is a definite PR move, and it's one of the things about with Rebels, I'm so glad this is another one of those titles that you really kind of like, dude, you got to read this. You'll like this. Trust me. And this was a title I almost dropped that I didn't because of all the comments, the positives that you were telling me about this.
But you've got to read this. This is a book that I'd recommend to people. Read it for a few issues before you judge it. It really is. The current arc is ending with issue 23, so you could easily pick up issue number 24 and jump on board this series. But do yourself a favor. Do not read this book for one issue and make a decision on it. Give it a good arc. And at the end of the arc, because you've got to see, to me, one of the great things about Rebels is things are set up in the early issues, and then there's all kinds of plot twists and turns and political agendas, and there's lots of action and everything that you would expect in a title, but you've got people from so many different races and so many different worlds involved in this that you really don't have a feel for it until the end of the arc. And it's one of the great things. And there's always, while one story's ending, there's another story building along the way. And there's a great supporting cast of villains and heroes and everything that's going on. It's one of the things I dig about this book.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that I kind of like is the geopolitical discussions and just where it goes with the different planets, with the different
Scions. I'm sorry, the planet Scion is the race that was having trouble with. They were the ones that had captured. I don't know. Okarans was one of the races. It's the planet Scion. I'm sorry. I just wanted to correct. Yeah. I wanted to correct myself. The Lantern was from the planet Scion, and it was the males from the race that were enslaving the females. So just to correct that. I'm sorry. Please continue.
Oh no. I was just actually kind of reiterating some of the stuff you said, where it's just, for me, the big thing about Rebels is this whole, with the different races. You talk about the expanding of it, and, you look at what's currently going on in society today. We have a lot of different, cultures, a lot of different beliefs, where in the media and the various just general people, people's general knowledge, you have flash information on somebody else of a different religion or someone from a different country, and you have one little small flash bit of information and you make generalizations based on that. Legion has a lot of those same kind of deals where we have our basic human knowledge, we have our basic human understanding, and what if a culture is completely different? What if a culture switches things around? What if they handle things differently? They look at a problem completely, to them this is something big and this is something small. Little things like a handshake or a bow. On Earth, we got different cultures where on one pair, go up to someone, hey, how you doing, buddy? Shake his hand, give him a pat on the arm. You're like, hey, how you doing? Is considered normal. Other cultures would find that rude and just outrageous that you went up and touched somebody that you didn't even know. No, you have to have some respect and some reverence. And it's stuff like that that I really enjoy in these space titles. I enjoy seeing, when the creators have fun with it and where they let the stuff flex it out in their minds and they just, kind of go with it and change things up.
This is what I liked about classic Flash Gordon, serialized Flash Gordon, was this type of thing. And it works in a modern space opera. Yeah. It's great space opera. I love how this Scion bit, the fact that the two females and Docs ended up conceding to them, has weakened the Scions to the point where it's actually going to come back to bite them in a big way. Because the weakened Scions were vulnerable now to, Astrolid, Storm Daughter, and, of course, Smite, and Starro, the Conqueror, in the sense that it's setting up Starro now as a force again. And this whole moment with their technology and what they were doing in the breeding tanks. Now, in their breeding tanks, did you take it that they were building, I guess, hybrid versions of Starfire?
Well, I think trying to incorporate her DNA and all that stuff.
Is that what was going on in that issue? Because that still hasn't come into play either, so the Scions aren't done for.
Oh, God, no. They're still, I think, and that's the thing, I think, with Rebels, where you have something where you think it's wrapped up, and you think you got a full little bow on it, okay, we're done with it. No, give us a couple issues. We'll come back to it. Because with the whole thing with Starro the Conqueror, when I flipped the page and saw that, he's the guy who saved this title for me. That annual that showed him, that showed his origin, that showed everything with, where and how and, why he is who he is, was the thing that saved Rebels for me. And I went back and I reread stuff and I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. I'm seeing this. This is cool. So seeing him come back in the fold again, I'm like, yes, he's back. Cool. It's the kind of stuff where there's not one little throwaway thing. It's going to come back later on. Maybe it'll be, 10 issues later. Maybe it'll be 2 issues or 6 or who knows when it's going to come back, but these story elements keep coming back. And when they bring it back, they kind of let you know about it. If you didn't know who Starro the Conqueror was, they give you a little bit of information on him here. Next issue when, now that he's back to power and now that he's going to beat up Virile Doc some more and he's going for, he's gunning for him, we're going to get some more again, just a little bit more information coming back, just reminding people if they're new to this stuff, this is who Starro is, this is why he is one dangerous son of a gun, and, Smite, you can physically look at him and see he's powerful, with Storm Daughter, another character that you look at her, you see intimidation in her. I love how she's drawn, she's got that, that confidence to her, she's got that unknown kind of mystery, but there's also just, there is just a coolness to her. These are characters that I really like physically seeing them. I like seeing how they're used in the title, and I'm kind of, really excited to see what's going to happen next now that they're back.
One of the things that I've really liked is Doc's and his son. His son was ready to not only turn on him, really to have Doc's dead.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden they have an uneasy alliance between the two of them where his son has a reason to, if for survival purposes, to make sure Dad doesn't basically lobotomize him again. It's what an interesting relationship that they have between the two. So, and it really seems like Docs is trying to connect with his son.
Yeah.
Like he wants a relationship with him.
Yeah.
I got that feeling at the end, like of respect for him, but the son isn't buying.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's not just about self-preservation for Docs in this one. I think he does want a relationship with his son. He does want something else, and I don't know if it's an emotional attachment or if it's just the an understanding of it. Could be a mutual respect kind of deal where he wants that from his son and he knows I got to give it to receive it kind of deal. But it was definitely kind of cool seeing it. Now the other side I did like about this story was the fact that Jon Stewart sent out those rookies to deal with the Sun Killer machine, but John's not about to let another mistake happen. He's not about to let another son die. Not about to let another society.
Well, he also knows
die.
Doc set up this situation as a way to make the Green Lantern Corps look bad. So if this thing screws up, it's going to be part of the smear. Because really, realistically, I think the end result was going to be the same no matter what happened.
Yeah, that ship was going to get destroyed. The sun would be saved, but
it's who looks good from it.
Yeah.
And in the end, it wound up being the Green Lanterns because they ended up finding a way to solve it. But Doc's was really... Do you think Doc's would have let the sun blow up?
No, and I think, the reason he made the solution so easy, but he masked how easy it was in the complexity of the machine. He made it so easy that he probably could have called up those goons and said, blow it up, shoot the machine now. And then it would look like Legion did it.
Right.
And that's how he would have, said, look, we did this, dun-da-da. It was us, not the Green Lantern Corps. They failed. And he made it, an easy fix, but he had to mask it and hide how easy it was. And the Lanterns were able to see through that. Think about it. Smash the machine. That is the easiest fix that you can imagine. And I loved seeing, the rookie Lantern just make the big old axe and cut right into it. But when they blow up the ship, they got the bad guys in that energy bubble so they don't die. Because, you know what, they are heroes. Yes, these are bad guys, but you don't want them to die in space. I thought that was just nice little stuff showing the rookies working it out, trusting their gut, going with it. And then you see, Kyle, you see, Ganthet there. You see, the powerhouses of the Green Lantern Corps saying, hey, we had your back here, so, just in case. And don't take this as an insult that John called for us because he didn't want this. He knew you could handle it, but just in case, he didn't want innocent lives to be at risk. That's what's part about being the Corps. Yeah. You got to think of the big picture. You got to think of the innocents. And I love seeing that in here, and that we get these cool Green Lantern moments inside this title. I'm curious what's going to happen if now that these two rookies are no longer rookies, they're full-fledged Lanterns now.
I loved seeing that play out in this issue. How we got to see them personalize their costumes because they'd earned that right to do it now.
Yeah.
And how at the end we got to see totally fit the personalities. And what was even cooler, we know them well enough because we've seen them through this arc to see that those costumes that they decided on totally fit who they are.
Yeah.
And the great part about them is because they went through this arc here, we can either see them in Rebels again or Tony Bedard's writing Corps. Maybe we'll see them in the Corps book. Who knows?
Yeah. I'm thinking we're going to see them in Rebels. Yeah. I think these two are going to be regulars in Rebels now.
Because of the sector?
Yeah, this is their sector. It's been established that the sector is starting to like the fact that Green Lanterns are there now. They're like, hey, it's kind of good that we have some Green Lanterns here. Yeah, so I think we're going to get some more of that.
One thing we forgot to mention, I really liked when Jon Stewart met up with Adam Strange. And their whole little thing, two Earthmen out here dealing with all these political agendas for other planets.
Yeah.
We're the representatives, like the voice of reason. And I really like how it was like these two guys saying, I think we both know this isn't going to go well.
Yeah.
Any way you cut it. But we're on the same page. We get each other. Our goal here is to make this go as nice as possible in a bad situation. And I really feel like the two of them afterwards, there's a little fist pumping going on or something like that. Good to see you again. And I liked that kind of sense of mutual respect, them knowing each other's reputations and who they are. And it was something about that just really worked for me and it came across on the page. And it's something that's been consistent with Rebels. Rebels done very well with dealing with Captain Comet, with dealing with Starfire, with dealing with Adam Strange. All these characters that are on the team. And then we've got the Durlin, who's on the team as well. And we've got a Dominator and, all these other races that are on there. It's just, wow. It's just character after character after character that I love that Dox's cabinet, I guess you would call them, his the Rebels, are just such a great group of people to follow and a real diverse
Yeah,
Riz.
and it's it was funny. I did keep chuckling a couple of the under the breath comments that they're making with Doc's practiced his smile because he needed a big smile.
It looks good on camera.
Looks good on camera, and just the little under their breath comments back and forth that probably happens, and just those kind of deals. And it's like when you watch a sporting event. You know, anytime I watch a baseball game, you see the pitcher and the catcher talking. They cover their mouths with their mitts. So you can't. So people watching them can't read their lips and realize.
And obviously, the opposing team
saying.
also can't.
Right, and it's little stuff like that. I was like, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I really dug that. It's a great series, and it's another one of those that it kind of fits the theme of most of this episode. It's just books that are a little bit of the smaller books that are a little under the radar. That just books that I would really highly recommend. That are just fantastic reads. I'm glad that you're getting what I'm getting out of Rebels.
Yes, yeah, and Rebels. Just so anybody who you read one title, it took multiple issues for me to actually get the groove of Rebels. It took a full story arc. It took actually the Star the Conqueror's story arc to really get me into Rebels. So this is a title where you got to read. I recommend reading a full story arc before you make your final judgment on it because it took me multiple issues before I actually started getting the vibe and I started enjoying it, and it became one of those titles that I'm like, okay, I can't drop this title now.
I would immediately recommend it to any Green Lantern reader.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because it's got, even though the Green Lantern may not be going forward a regular character, it still has that same vibe. If you're reading Green Lantern Corps and you like the other Green Lanterns, you like the space aspect of it, the other cultural aspect of it, this is a book you'll enjoy.
Hey, Sean and Jim, Eli from New York City, the song parody guy. I just heard your show about the Earth 1 Superman. I'm way behind. But great review. It's a great book. My God, it really blew me away. The artwork, the story was really excellent. But I want to rant about DC. I think they really blew it on this one in regards to JMS. And so they had a big announcement that he's doing the Superman book and he's doing Wonder Woman, and they had posters made up. It was a big deal. And, in fact, I'm buying Wonder Woman because of it. And now, with the success of Earth 1 Superman, he's been pulled off the other books. And now he's concentrating to get another Superman Earth 1 book out quicker than it was previously scheduled. So, and now the guys who are writing the regular Superman and Wonder Woman books, I've never heard of them. They're going on notes that JMS had, so he's not finishing his arc. If you've committed to the book, like I have, at least with Wonder Woman, I'm a little miffed that they did that. And also, the way I think DC was really blew this, was the way they treated Gail Simone, frankly. I remember when she took over Wonder Woman, there was a big to-do about that. New York Times had a feature article on her that finally a woman was writing Wonder Woman, the premier, character of the top three, at least for DC Comics, and finally a woman is writing Wonder Woman. And the way they took her off the book, I found very dismissive. They commented that the stories, or they wanted to change the direction of the stories. They said that in San Diego. And they never really addressed Gail Simone's status on the book. All of a sudden, she just wasn't doing it anymore. And then JMS came in to do it. And I just think that it was really poor treatment of her. And she's still with the company, so apparently she didn't have that much of a problem with it, but I think she was miffed by it. I haven't heard her address it. Sean, you had an interview with her, and I was a little disappointed you didn't bring it up, but I can understand why. I don't know how you bring that up in an interview like that without her. She probably wouldn't be able to comment on it, so I thought it was a good interview. I was disappointed it wasn't brought up. And now that she was pulled off the book so unceremoniously back a few months ago, now they're putting someone else on Wonder Woman after only 4 or 5 issues with the big, exciting announcement of JMS writing it, and now she's not writing it anymore, and someone else who I've never heard of is writing it. I find that DC really, really blew it on this one. I thought they treated Gail Simone really badly, and I thought they're treating the people who have committed to Superman and Wonder Woman badly by pulling JMS off the title. Yes, the Superman book probably needs to get out faster than originally scheduled, but I think they panicked a bit. That's my view. I don't know if you've talked about this at all, because like I said, I'm behind on shows, but thanks for listening. And, okay, bye.
You make some interesting points. I also think you're going off of a few assumptions, though. First of all, let me talk about the JMS situation first, as far as his leaving Superman and Wonder Woman. I don't know that was DC's decision. I agree with everything you're saying. They put a high-profile ad campaign out there. I know during his tenure, he was... I believe that he had some health issues. I'm not 100% sure on that, because I don't really follow that stuff. I really enjoy reading the books. I don't follow a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff. But I had seen on different message boards people had mentioned that, so I don't know how much weight to put in all that. I know he mentioned in an interview that he was had some illness issues during part of it. I don't know if that had anything to do with this. It does seem like from the interviews that I've seen from him that this is a decision he wanted as well, that he wanted to step away from the monthly books and focus more on graphic novels. I know he has another graphic novel planned besides Superman Earth 1 that he also wanted to do. I don't know how true that is. That could be the public, answer that they're giving all of us. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So did DC drop the ball on this? Did JMS really want this? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, so I don't really know who's to blame. As far as whether or not there actually is somebody blame is going to be an interesting issue, because, first of all, we're making assumptions on books that have not been released yet. So Phil Hester, who did Green Arrow, a great Green Arrow run on the DCN previously, and Chris Robertson, who's currently doing some great work over at Vertigo, are two writers who I like. I do think it's hard, like you said, they're following off of notes, and Jim and I have talked about this on the show before. I do think it's hard to follow another writer's framework, but is that how they're going to have to do this? Or are they going to be able to put some of their own flavor in it? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this all works out. I'm going to give both writers a chance, though, before I condemn it, because I'll give a great example. On Grounded, G. Willow Wilson had a fill-in issue on it that I thought was great. So, it is proof that another writer can step in on a different writer's framework and make it work for me. So I don't know. I'm going to wait. I'm on a very much a tentative wait and see. I'm with you in the sense that it could go wrong, but I've got to give these writers a chance before I get upset about it. I don't know the whole story. I'm not going to pretend that I know that it was DC's fault, JMS's fault, or if they came to a mutual decision, there could be a reason why it was for the better of both books to do this. I don't know. And that's the other part we got to remember, too. They may have taken a look at a situation and said, this really is the best solution. And both sides were for this. So I don't know how this all came about, and I don't think we should make any assumptions there. Because we certainly haven't gotten any announcements of JMS leaving DC, so obviously he's happy with this as well, as far as I know. And that's kind of where I'm going to leave my comments on that. On the Gail Simone interview end of things, I would never put a creator in a position where the company they're working for, even if they were no longer with DC, and we were talking about some work they had done, I would never put them in a position where they had to ask questions that could potentially affect their career. In the case of the question you're talking about, that would be really putting her on the spot. With a question that, first of all, I don't think she could answer in a million years, because of the fact that some of those things you're going to want to just keep off of the media and the public spotlight. She's writing Secret Six for DC. She's writing Birds of Prey for DC and Welcome to Tranquility. Plus, she had a run on Wonder Woman, which to me was tremendous. I loved her run. I've repurchased her run in collected form, which says a lot about my feelings about a run that I've got all the floppies, but I've also got the collected editions of it. And I don't follow her work blindly. It's just her work really speaks to me. I love and adore her work. So that's just, and honestly, when she's on the show, that's what I want to talk about. I really want to talk about her work, not about awkward comments that I know that she can't possibly answer either. And that's something where I want people to feel safe on this podcast coming on to talk about their work, and that we're not going to put them in that position to ask questions that I know in a million years they can't possibly answer. Remember, that's their career and livelihood. So what are they going to do? What's she going to do? Come on the show and just say, oh, yeah, DC screwed me over and all that? I don't know that that's what happened. Because like you said, she's still with the company, so... who knows what and that never even occurred to me to ask her, and never would. I mean, it's just not one of those things, I'm sure, as with any job in comics, and this isn't about Gale, this is just in general, I'm sure there's decisions that the company makes with regards to you, if you're a writer or an artist or something like that, as far as how long you're on a book, where they'll make changes that I'm sure you don't like. And that's the honest truth. Was she thrilled to be off Wonder Woman? I don't know. Maybe that was the time where it was done. They wanted to head in a new direction. Maybe there was talks of her staying on the book, and she didn't like what they wanted to do, or didn't feel she was the right writer for it. Or it may have been that they decided to move in a different direction and took her off the book. I loved her run, so I'm, as a fan of Wonder Woman, when she was writing it, I'm very sad that she came off the book, because to me it felt like there was so much more that could have been done with her run, in a run that I think did a ton. So it's funny, the Olympian recently appeared in Outsiders, and I was just thinking of just the great characters that she created, the Circle and the Olympian and stuff like that. So her run was great. I don't know that it was bad treatment of her, though. I don't know what those negotiations went like behind the scenes. I don't know if it's just a part of the, what happens in the comic industry. Writers change on books all the time. So it's... my preference is that writers can, continue ongoing. Like, I would have loved to have seen her Wonder Woman run go the way that Green Lantern has, for example. I'm thrilled that she's back on Birds of Prey, because of the fact that, she's somebody who, look at what she's done with Birds before, and look where she's taking it now. And she's the type of writer that I know will continue to evolve those characters and continue to come up with new ways to challenge them and to give us challenging stories, which is what I think she would have done with Wonder Woman as well if she was able to stay on it. But I would not put her in a position where she would have to answer a question, where I would ask a question like that. Not even that she'd have to answer it, because she couldn't. I mean, realistically, how can anybody answer that question on a podcast, an interview show, or something like that? They would have to give a diplomatic answer, because it's career suicide. What is she going to do? Throw the company she works for under the bus? If there was that problem, again, you're making an assumption there that there was a problem. I don't know if there was or there wasn't. There could have been, sure. That is a possibility. But the other possibility is taking a look at the direction they wanted to head Wonder Woman, and maybe she chose to not continue on with it because she didn't like the direction they were going in, or maybe didn't feel as a writer it was the right spot for her. I don't know how that worked behind the scenes, or it could have been somewhere in the middle. It doesn't necessarily have to even be A and B. A lot of times I think we as people forget that sometimes there's not just an A and B choice. The alphabet's filled with letters, and there could be all kinds of other different options on how that went down. I don't know. And that's something, if she came on the podcast and started talking about it without, being asked, I would let her certainly go ahead and continue, because that would mean that's something she wants to speak on. But I would never put somebody in that position. Not just her, any creator. That's really just, I think that's poor form, to put their job in jeopardy with a question like that if they did answer it. Or, on the other end of it, ask them a question that I know they can't answer. Because then that's a conversation derailer, too. You ask that question, then how do you get back into chatting about their books or chatting about things that they can talk about? You hit that roadblock, and that's something you have to be very conscientious of in an interview, too. You ask a certain question that derails your conversation, and the interview's done. I mean, it really, you take a momentum that was going and an energy that was going, and you just kill it with a question that can't be answered. So, I don't know. That just, to me, and you might disagree with that, and that's fine. That's my philosophy on it. We're not an interview show, per se, and I really think we're about the celebration of comics. So when I have creators on, the questions that I ask tend to fit the theme of our podcast, versus trying to get into awkward, controversial questions that are going to put them in that bad place. I think there's a lot of great interview shows out there that do those types of things, and that's what their shows are for. I'll give you a great example. A podcast that's a straight interview podcast is Word Balloon, and I think that podcast is phenomenal. I love what John Suntress does, but that's an interview podcast, and that's not something we're ever going to be. We really are more about the books than anything else, and when the creators are on, our focus is going to be on the same thing that it's on when we don't have creators, the books. not behind the scenes, getting into that kind of stuff, because it's not what Raging Bullets has ever been all about. So thematically, why did we do the interview the way that we did? Because that's what our show theme is, and it fits. I think a creator, when they come onto Raging Bullets, should know this is hey, when they're chatting about comics, that's what they're going to chat about when they come on, and that's the way it should be. That's what I think, at least. There's a theme to our podcast. So that's the case. I don't know. All this, I'm going to be very interested to see how this JMS thing turns out. There are two writers who I really like. I am very tentative in the sense that I do, like I said previously, I am very tentative because it's hard to follow somebody else's notes. And yet I would imagine these are discussions, I'm sure they didn't just wake up on Monday and decide, hey, let's get two new writers on Wonder Woman and Superman. I'm sure the discussions were held as far as taking a look at the direction JMS was heading in. The discussions were held with these writers. They have to have a plan for the books. I'm sure they didn't just say, hey, let's plop writer A and writer B on there and go. I'm sure they picked two writers, and I'm sure they probably aren't the only two writers they talked to. I would imagine, that there was a process that went through as far as looking for pitches, as far as who can handle what JMS was doing and finish off the stories in a way that makes logical sense and exciting sense for the fans. So I'm sure this wasn't done. I mean, why would they shoot themselves in the foot like that? So whatever led to this decision, I don't know. I'm going to give both books a chance. And there is another possibility here, which nobody realizes. What happens if both books are better because of this? I mean, realistically, I'm liking what JMS is doing on both Superman and Wonder Woman. I've been an advocate for both books, but hey, here's a crazy thing. What happens if these two writers come on and actually kick it up a notch? And that's something that's funny. I haven't heard a lot of that in commentary. A lot of people are down on this decision because, JMS is leaving. And I love JMS. I'm a huge, going back to Babylon 5, one of my favorite programs of all time. I think he's just a fabulous writer. I read a lot of his Marvel work as well. Also, I read all of his Top Cow stuff, which I highly recommend. So, JMS is a writer who I'm through the roof on. But as with anything, sometimes when a change happens, it's better. So who knows? What are these two? I'm going to give these two writers a chance. Let's see what they do. Before I'm not going to pick up the first issue and be down on it. Let me see what they're going to go with. So I think you're making a few assumptions that could be correct. You might be correct, but you've got to look at the big picture and say there are other possibilities there. There's a whole lot of options as far as went on. I don't know. Obviously nobody's publicly released anything. Maybe somewhere years down the road, we'll find out. Those, maybe the writers in question or editors in question or somebody will, do a tell-all interview and tell us what actually happened here. But right now, on the public end of things, is DC going to release that information? No. Both writers, you mentioned Gail Simone and JMS, are still working for DC. Are they going to release that information? Of course not. They work for the company. I mean, that's kind of crazy. So, it's just really kind of where it's at. I think it's a great call, and thank you very much for calling. I'm not trying to put you down at all. I think you've posed very interesting questions. Just the honest reality is there's no way for us to find that information out. So I'm really glad you brought this in. This isn't, and obviously I'm spending a lot of time responding to this voicemail because I find it interesting. So this is a very interesting conversation point. And it's also one, though, that the real true answer is we're not going to know the whole story. And, it's just one of those things where, as fans, that's just part of our role. The books and the products are put out for us. The end result, did DC make a good decision or not? I don't know. We won't know until we receive those books. What do these two writers do? They are writers who I'm familiar with, so I'm excited for their work because I like what they're doing. But, ultimately, how are they going to do with this JMS template? I don't know. I just don't know. And I'm, as a fan of Gail Simone, a huge fan of Gail Simone, I hope she was treated well because she's writing some of my favorite books for DC, and they got to treat her nice because I want her around for a long, long time. So, and that is an honest thing, editorializing on my end. I'm hoping that she's treated very well by DC because Secret Six is bar none, hands down. Birds of Prey and Secret Six are bar none, hands down my two favorite books because I flip-flop between which one is my absolute favorite each month. Her leaving DC for any reason, if that were ever to happen, would be a huge blow for me. Because if there was anything that would make me consider changing the type of podcast that I do, it would be her doing work elsewhere. only because I really enjoy being able to chat about her work on this show. I wouldn't stop doing Raging Bullets, but that would get me to do another podcast as well. There would be a second Raging Bullets style podcast out there just to follow her work. So that's how strongly I feel about what Gail Simone does. I would want to chat about her work to the point that I would actually do an additional podcast to make sure I could. So that says a lot. So I'm hoping they treat her well. I don't know the answers. And I would never, just so you know, both on and off the air, I have never asked her that question, and I never will. You know, that's one of those things where, you know, that's her career, that's her job, and I would not put her in that kind of awkward position. And that's just my take on it. Jim, once again, our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. DC Universe Online Legends #1 is a special book that's going to be available from DCBService.com. It's 50% off. It's written by Tony Bedard and Marv Wolfman, art by Howard Porter and Livesay, with Adriano Mello and Norman Lee. The DC event of the year begins, coinciding with the release of the widely anticipated DCU MMO. Get ready for the ride of a lifetime with this immense 26-issue bi-weekly series. Lex Luthor's obsession with destroying Superman reaches a fevered limit when he cuts the ultimate devil's deal with Brainiac. But with the shake of a hand, has Luthor co-signed humanity to genocide? Comic book legend Marv Wolfman joins fan-favorite writer Tony Bedard and artist Howard Porter to tell the ultimate DC Universe superhero tale of good versus evil. 26 issues on that one, and I like these. I know you're a fan of like Brightest Day and Justice League Generation Lost, Jim. I'm excited for another bi-weekly to be going on. I like the immediacy. So I think that's going to be a fun series, and you can't beat the creative team on that. So that'll be very cool. $2.99 regularly, 50% off, only $1.49. The second issue, because it's bi-weekly, is also available at 45% off. So it's a great time for those of you that are looking on a budget to pick up these books. Yeah. You know, hey, you're getting them at close to half price to get both issues, and that's really, really great. So thank you, DCBService.com, for those amazing deals. And Jim, over at InStockTrades.com, as I mentioned at the beginning, the Azrael Angel in the Dark trade paperback, collecting the first 6 issues of the series. 144 pages, regularly $17.99, 38% off, only $11.15. And remember, with InStockTrades.com, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. So it's good stuff. Thank you, InStockTrades.com. Jim, our next episode, we're actually going to record another episode this week to have one while you're on vacation. We're talking some Gail Simone.
Big time.
There's a bunch of Gail Simone books that I want to talk about, so it's not just going to be Gail Simone. We're going to actually talk other books as well, but oof.
We got to talk.
I want to talk Six. I want to talk Birds, The End of Welcome to Tranquility. All those books are going to be discussed, along with a bunch of other stuff, but there's a lot of big events to discuss, so that's a guaranteed lock.
Yeah.
This week we're going to be discussing those books as well. Actually, there's a lot of books you and I wanted to get to discuss as well that we're probably going to also throw onto that episode. So it'll be a lot like what this episode was is what our next episode's going to be. And I'd like to keep doing these over the next few weeks just to give us an opportunity. Raging Oscars are coming up, and we tried to figure out, like, kind of similar to what we did last year, but we're going to limit ourselves on categories, no more than 10 each. Which I think is kind of an interesting decision as far as we don't have to use all 10. We talked about that. But what we think is the best of the best in what happened in 2010. It will be our first episode in January is going to be the Raging Oscars episode. No more than 10 categories, and we're going to discuss the books that fit into those categories. So very fun. And I'm going to say this. It has to be the top 5 in every category.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, more a problem for me than you.
Yeah. Well, I have those problems too.
No, but I'm going to say I definitely have a problem with sticking to, so we're going to say 10 categories, no more than top, because we have to limit it to ourselves to top 5.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. Raging Oscars 2010. So, and for any of our listeners out there, please feel free to call into our show voicemail line with what you thought was the best and best of 2010. You know, what were some books that stood out for you? What were some trends that you would like to see continue? This is a celebration of what worked during the year. So, you know, there's been titles that you're like, geez, I really wish we got the word out about this title. This is something that was really great that was happening. It's your chance to do that. Definitely call into our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4888. 888-4434 or drnorge on Skype. And that's in the show notes, and it's also available on the website. But we love having you a part of our show. Please let us know at the start of the voicemail that it's for the Raging Oscars, because that'll be a way for us to kind of red flag that we need to save it for that episode. But we'd definitely love to have you be a part of that. It's going to be our first episode in January that we're recording. So, woo-hoo! Yay, good stuff. Jim, we're going to end off 2010 repeating what we did in 2009. I think this is something we've done since we've had the show. At least 4 episodes a month, every month.
Outstanding.
Yeah, and it's been a goal that I've really wanted to push, with busy schedules and stuff like that.
We've had some struggles, and we've had some.
We've been a 4-month podcast, though, all the way since then. And I think the only year that we ever skipped that is we experimented that one year it was like a 2-month stretch. We were trying to go to 10 days between episodes and sticking to that. And I think 1 or 2 months in there, we had 3 episodes during that month.
But I think we caught up later that we had...
But I'm saying in the month itself. Okay. So, I mean, I think you're right. During that year, by the time we were done, we actually had the right number of episodes. But 2009 and 2010, both years, we are going to be ending off the year 2010 with 4 episodes a month in the actual month. And the same thing with 2009. So it was a goal that I had, or more, but that was something that was a goal of mine, and it's something I'd like to repeat in 2011.
Rock and roll, man.
Yeah, because I think it's a certain consistency. I know our release date shifts here and there, but one of the consistency things that I want to make sure people know about our show is you're going to get 4 episodes a month from us, at least. And thank you for all of you for listening to us in 2010 for those episodes. And, welcome to the newer listeners that are listening as well. But that's what you can expect from Raging Bullets. So, good stuff. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and loss and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan. And what you do to me. Are closing in, be they Thanin Guard or Egyptian. Working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for